Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Big Bass Podcast live. Live, that's right. Not taped, not out of a can. Absolutely live. I'm Ken Duke.
And I'm Terry Battisti. It's about time we did this, huh, Ken? I mean,
I think so.
it's
I'm
only
excited
it's
about
only
this.
been 4.5 months, something like that. And with everybody telling us that we should do a live one, I think it's about
Oh,
time we did it.
no.
So,
Oh, we
what
had
are
a
we
little
gonna talk
freeze
about?
there from Terry, I thought, for a second. We're having, folks, if you're familiar with the Big Bass Podcast, you know that occasionally we have some minor technical issues. But Nathan Benson, who you will hear from tonight, is the master of getting those things ironed out and allowing Terry and I to focus on telling the stories that we want to tell about big bass. And it's one of the reasons we want to do this. I'd say the main reason we wanted to do this live show is to thank everybody who have been listening and supporting and sharing some kind words about what we're doing with the Big Bass Podcast. It means a great deal to us.
Yep.
We really appreciate it.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Yeah, we have really bad storms rolling through Knoxville here right now, and it's been Darius King. What's up, brother? Glad to have you here. Good times. Yeah, thank you. Appreciate the kind words.
It's Terry and I are very, very serious, and we always try to get back to everybody who posts a comment on one of our videos, and Nathan posts some comments too. And but this is a lot more, I don't know, a lot more
Personal,
face to face,
interactive.
personal, intimate, and I'm really looking forward to that. Brown Bait Company, appreciate your support, young man, and really admire the baits that I've seen on your site. You got some very cool stuff.
Yep.
Yeah, so and we're hoping that it'll be interactive in the sense that we want to hear questions from y'all. And we want to
Good old rock
go.
and roll fantasy. Thank
there
you,
you
JR.
go. Absolutely. But we're really looking forward to answering any questions you might have, or maybe you just tell us what you want to hear about next. We just finished. We just dropped the third and final episode of the David Hayes World Record Smallmouth story, and gotten a really good response on that. And we're going to let you, hey, Alex Heimberger just finished the last episode of that. So, Alex, I hope you liked it. I hope it was was worth waiting for. All 3 episodes. I think all total, Terry, we probably had about almost 2.5 hours of David Hayes.
Oh, yeah, it was because the first episode was an hour. I think the second episode was about 40 minutes, and the third episode was pushing, it was almost an hour. So, yeah, it was a good amount of time, but the amount of research that went into that series, it's amazing. We got into 2.5 or 2 hours and 40
Decades,
minutes. Oh
yeah.
Definitely decades.
People don't maybe realize that that's something that Terry and I have been fascinated with since we were kids, and by the way, we are old now, so that means decades of interest.
I didn't realize I was interested in history until I got older, and it's like, holy shit, I lived all that stuff. I was living history in the 70s, working at the tackle store, looking at, because Bob had just boxes and boxes of old reels and old lures, in the back room and underneath the counter and stuff, and I'd have to go in there and clean that stuff up, and it would just, he'd tell me, quit fiddling with the stuff, just clean down there. Because I'd sit down on the floor and look at these old reels or old lures and stuff, and it was all getting packed into my melon somehow.
That leads into the first question, Terry.
Oh,
from
there's Mr.
hey, folks,
that's Mr. Wilson. That's Mr. Wilson from.
That's the voice of Nathan. Yeah, the voice of Nathan Benson, who Terry, for my money, Nathan's got a better voice than either of us. But folks never really get to hear Nathan. He's got the best.
Wants to hear from me.
He's got the best podcast radio voice of the 3 of us.
Now, you are the historians. They want to hear from you. Ken, Terry, how long ago did you think of this idea of the Big Bass Podcast, and how did you know this was going to be something you wanted to do 10 to 20 years down the line?
Oh, God. To be honest with you, I've wanted to do a podcast for a long time. I know Ken has wanted to do a podcast at least for 10 years. I've wanted to do one for probably, the last 10 years or 5 to 10 years, something like that. But there was never a topic that I could cover that would be unique to the podcast industry with respect to bass fishing. And I know that Ken felt the same way. So I have the Bass Fishing Archives website, which is a website dedicated to the history of bass fishing. And it's not big fish, it's all of bass fishing. And if you're interested, go to just Google Bass Fishing Archives, and the first thing that you'll see at the top is the link to the site. Ken and I have been talking for years about us doing these podcasts. And finally, it's almost a year ago. I think it was at ICAST or shortly thereafter last year that I get a phone call from you, and it's Ken and I talk multiple times a week. And our phone conversations are a lot like what you see on this podcast. They are just long drawn out. We'll deep dive into some historical portion of bass fishing, and next thing we know, it's literally 4 o'clock in the morning, and I got to get up in 2 hours to go to work. But that's the way it works. But he calls me up one night and says, "Hey, I've got an idea for a podcast." And I said, "Okay, what is it?" And he says, "It's the Big Bass Podcast." So, all right, that's cool. So what's the premise? And he explains the premise. It's like, wow, yeah, I think that's a really cool. There's nobody doing it, and what better person than you can to do this? And he goes, "No, that's the thing. I want to do it with you." And at that point, I got butterflies in my stomach and my panties got wet, and yeah, it was.
Wow.
Yikes! Yikes!
yeah, I went there. No, it was just it made sense, and I felt honored that he would ask me to be his partner. So
no,
is that the way it went, Ken?
That's the way it went. But I was the one honored that Terry would do it, and just to give folks maybe a little broader perspective on how it all came up. Like Terry said, I've been wanting to do a podcast like this for a long time. I have zero technical skills, and I have zero social media presence. But Nathan Benson, our other partner, and we're equal partners in this effort, by the way, the three of us. Nathan's a technical whiz. He's got a degree in digital media, and he knows his stuff. And he can't sometimes get around issues like bad internet connections, but anything else, Nathan's MacGyver. You give him a stick of chewing gum and some duct tape, and he can figure it out. And anyway, it was just I said, this is the dream team of doing something like this. Terry Battisti, Nathan Benson, we can make this happen. And Terry and Nathan didn't know each other, but I knew each of them well enough to know they would hit it off. And one of the great things about it is watching those guys become great friends in the process.
Thanks, Jeremy. The 1714 from Lake Murray.
There you go.
Appreciate you, Jeremy. Wow.
Would that be James Bates?
That's James Bates's fish, yes. And I've actually talked to Jeremy, and I've talked to Jeremy's dad via email right after that episode posted, and they both were real happy that we mentioned him and that fish, and I believe Jeremy is. I think Jeremy's dad has the fish in his house still.
And of course, that was the California state record until Dave Zimmerly broke it in 73.
Yep. Yeah. So that fish held the California state record for a year.
Yeah, a little better than a year maybe. So what amazing fish. Another historical fish. Jeremy, we hope to dig in and do a full episode on your grandfather's fish one of these days. We will.
That would be way cool.
Yeah.
That would be
get to it. And we'll be leaning on you, Jeremy. We'll need some pictures.
Yep.
We'll need some.
Thank you for the super chat.
Definitely
thank you so much, man. $4.99. That's like 20% of what we've made so far. You just increased
It is.
our income by about 20%. So Jeremy, you have no idea.
Yep.
Jeremy's now apparently a shareholder.
You
in
should
the
have
Big Bass
said
Podcast.
shareholder.
Yeah, actually, I think, and Nathan probably has better diagnostics on this than I do, metrics on this. But we made about $40 on the Big Bass Podcast so far. Nathan, we got one from Matthew.
Yeah. What about a Big Bass podcast from each state?
Now, what do you mean by that, Matthew? Is that you want us to go to each state and do one live from there, or are you talking about
Maybe a franchise situation?
A Big Bass podcast, about each state,
Because we're going to do that.
Because we are going to do that. That's already in the books. There's only 52 weeks in a year. I guess that means that it would take us an entire year to do the whole country.
Well, we just burned 3 on one fish out of Dale Hollow. So yeah, it's going to take us years. But Nathan, do you want to read that one from Stump Jack?
Oh yeah, sorry. It's I think Terry should be wearing a Big Bass Podcast hat on these live streams like Ken, but it should be a cowboy hat.
Thanks, Stump Jack.
This is one of 2 Big Bass Podcast caps right now. I have the other one also. It's blue.
Yeah. He won't give any of them out. He's a hoarder, kind of like his office.
We got to get some merch. Hey Nathan, you want to go back to that last one about the Hayes stuff?
Yep, it wasn't a question. I'm just showing some of the comments here, but I love the interviews with David Hayes.
Yep. Yeah, those were.
The last 3 episodes were awesome. It's so cool to see a giant smallmouth.
That was a big smallmouth, Aaron, wasn't it? I mean, you look at that fish in his lap, and there is no question that thing was pushing, 12 pounds. I mean, it almost dwarfed him.
Yep, Mr. Hayes was not a big guy, and I had the good fortune of knowing Mr. Hayes for 15 years, and I had the privilege of being in his home a couple times and seeing the fish and holding the fish and all that, holding the rod and reel, holding the lure, all that stuff. It was very cool. And as I pointed out in one of our recent episodes, Nathan and I were there to make those videos in 2010. So Nathan and I have been working on the Big Bass Podcast for 13 years, which is much longer than Terry has.
Yeah, I'm a newcomer.
He's a newbie, or the FNG. As some might call him.
Nathan is the songbird of his generation.
I'm not sure what that means exactly.
No, neither am I, JR.
I will take it as a compliment.
God. Yeah, but to get back to the state thing, yeah, we are going to be breaking down, and of course there's going to be duplicates out of certain states, but we're not going to only be doing each state and its big smallmouth and largemouth or whatever bass that they have. It could be Guadalupe bass when you get down into Texas, right? I mean, a 1 pound, 3 ounce Guadalupe bass is a giant. I mean, that's like a 15-pound largemouth.
Yes.
And we're going to talk about all that stuff.
Yeah, unless you watch the About segment, which we call episode 000 here at the Big Bass Podcast, maybe you don't understand the full scope of what our plans are, but big is a very relative term. Like Terry's saying, a big Guadalupe is a tiny largemouth out of California, but it's a big fish out of Texas or Oklahoma. So we have big, expansive plans for the Big Bass Podcast. Nathan, I love this question.
Yeah,
from Christopher Benson, who is just not related to me as far as I know. Ken, what's your most prized collectible that Terry doesn't have?
Oh my God, Christopher! What a lovely.
Let me count the ways.
there are so many. It's hard to pin down what my favorite might be. Oh, it could be Walter Hardin's book, How to Catch World's Record Bass. It could be.
Here we go.
This. Yeah. The very first Bassmaster Classic trophy.
It's not a trophy. It's a figurine, for crying out loud. We've been through this. Bobby Murray has the only trophy presented at the Classic One. Keep digging.
It could be this.
Oh, that's cool.
The actual
Yeah.
photograph that George Perry sent to Creek Chub Bait Company in 1934. It might be that, Christopher. I don't know. So much to choose from. So much.
Yeah, yeah. Ken's got so much ephemera, memorabilia. At the age of 59, there's no way in hell I'll ever catch up with him.
Oh,
And I
he's
have a pretty sizable collection, but it's nothing compared to what I think. I probably have more baits than you do.
I guarantee, because I never
and
get to go
maybe-
fishing. I'm always researching for the Big Bass Podcast.
Yeah,
Well, Terry was here at the house just a couple of months ago. He was here working on a project that's going to be remarkably cool, and that everybody who has any interest in the Big Bass Podcast should check out. Terry's working on a documentary on the history of bass fishing that hopefully will be completed before the end of the year. But anyway, Terry
Yeah.
was here at the house, and he got the tour of the hellish hole that I work in.
I've never seen anybody pack so much shit in a 12 by 12 box that Ken calls his office. I mean, he's literally got bookshelves from floor to ceiling, and you've got what, 13-foot ceilings in that room?
Yeah, they're
They're
pretty tall.
high.
Well, not here, not in this room. Maybe here they're probably only 11 or so. Out
Yeah.
in the living area and stuff, where I also have a lot of bookcases. Yeah, it's 13.
He's got bookcases that are double and triple stacked, and then on top
Yeah,
of
they're
that,
they're 2 books deep. You know.
Yeah,
There's the book
yeah,
you can
so-
see, and behind it there's another book usually.
yeah, yep.
Oh, I love this one. I love this one.
Brown Bait Company. What episode was the most fun for you guys to make?
Terry, you're up.
My first,
Uh-oh.
yeah,
All right, you go
probably
first.
the probably the Casitas one. Am I locked up?
You locked up for a moment.
Okay. Am I? All right. Go ahead. Just go.
No, we heard. Go back. You said it was probably the Casitas episode, which, by the way, folks, is to date at least our most popular episode, which came as a surprise to me, quite honestly. But go ahead and tell us about it.
Yeah, it was. It was the one. Like for H.W. Ross. I mean, you've been living that for almost your whole life. The Hayes episode. You put your blood, sweat, and tears and a lot of years into it. For me, that was Lake Casitas or any of the California ones that we've done so far, because down there and worked in one of the best tackle shops in Southern California at the time, and I lived it, and it was really cool to actually get to tell that story, because it was near and dear to my heart. So that's my favorite. What's your favorite, Ken?
I'm torn. You mentioned the H.W. Ross episode, which I think was like our first episode.
It was our first episode.
I loved doing that episode because I think that's a fish that almost nobody knows about. It's a fish that weighed 23 pounds, 2 ounces from 1884. And to share that story with the bass fishing world, and to share information that nobody else but us had about that fish, was a blast to me. And it was also it was also maybe a favorite because it's the first one we ever did.
Yeah.
It was exciting to do, and these are still exciting to do. My other favorite, I love doing the Fritz Friebel story. The guy who caught a 20, the world record between 1923 and 1932 was Fritz Friebel out of Florida, 20 pounds, 2 ounces. And I love doing the Hayes episode 3 because that was, we kept telling everybody, hey, we got a bombshell to drop at the end of episode 3. And I felt like we delivered on that. I felt like that was a solid episode. And for anybody who took the time to listen, I feel like they got information that they can't get anywhere else. And that's one of the big things that's important to me about the Big Bass podcast.
Yep.
Well, that leads into a really good question for you, Ken, from Dustin Grant. How did you feel knowing all the work you put in helping David Hayes, and then you heard him say he gave the rod and reel to his wife?
Well, Dustin, that's a great question, man. all the bells were firing in my head when I heard that. All the bells were firing. I think, oh my God, this guy's just potentially taking himself out of the record book.
Yeah.
But then I started thinking about it a lot more systematically, and I realized all the things I said at the end of episode 3. So I won't belabor them. But hey, those weren't rules in 1955 when Field and Stream was keeping them. Hey, this record should be grandfathered in by IGFA, and there's no way they should DQ it simply because he didn't follow rules that were not in place until 1978. Yeah. And the fact that none of the record-keeping organizations as entities are as important as David Hayes and his 11-pound, 15-ounce smallmouth bass. So, although all the red flags and bells went off in my head, I thought, this is not a fraudulent catch. This is just a guy who didn't follow rules that were not even in place when he caught the fish.
Yeah. Yep.
But yeah, that got my attention really fast, Dustin. When he said that, I thought, uh-oh.
This sucks. How am I gonna keep this out of the story?
I kept it a secret for 15 years until well, and it wasn't. I say it was a secret. I think some other people probably knew about it because other people certainly interviewed Hayes over the years, and other people probably heard that aspect of the story. But I think a lot of them didn't understand it. Didn't understand it would have been against the rules of IGFA or the Freshwater Fishing Hall of Fame because they weren't interested in that stuff. They were just interested in a big smallmouth bass. Yeah. But Nathan also knew about it, of course. And it was just something we might talk about it off to the side, but we didn't really share it or plan to air it. But then, as I said, when we started the Big Bass Podcast, we try not to hold anything back. If there's information about these fish and we're telling the story, we're going to give you everything we got, unless we just think it's too intensely boring or insignificant.
Yep. I mean, that's the important thing is, keeping the wheat with the there's going to be good and there's going to be bad, and things may not fall our way at times, but the truth is the truth.
Yeah, we want to be, Terry and I both like to think of ourselves as historians, but neither of us is trained as a historian. But
we're trained as researchers.
We are trained as researchers. My background in education is in the law. I went to law school. I practiced law for a decade. Terry's a PhD.
Public high school diploma.
No.
PhD
engineer.
Research engineer.
Yeah. So, I mean, we have some qualifications as researchers and as people who dig in. But
thank you, William.
Yeah, William, thank you, man. But we don't
get some
we don't have the
so you
buy the Big Bass Podcast.
And we better get some merch, for crying out loud. We got people buying merch before we have merch.
Well, somebody asked about merch on a comment today in the David Hayes episode 3 comment section. And we just recently cracked 1,100 subscribers. And we're grateful for every one of you. Absolutely every one of you.
Absolutely.
We're trying to grow the show, and we rely on y'all to spread the word. We rely on y'all to continue to tune in, and we rely on y'all to give us some feedback so we know hopefully where to go next to keep you guys listening. That said, we do want to grow the show big enough so that we can either continue to monetize in a meaningful way through YouTube or find some sponsors who can help us continue to do this, because these shows are incredible investments to us. We spend an amazing number of hours researching these stories. We spend hours putting the story together. Every story we've done so far, we've done 23, has this massive outline that goes on for page after page after page, where Terry and I think how we should tell that story. And then there's the cost of doing the show, the equipment, the platforms, and all that. So we're deep in the hole. And so far we've monetized through YouTube. We've made almost $40. But so we're looking to grow it, and our plan always was or has been that once we reach about 10,000 subscribers, we'd have some merch. And I don't know if that's still the plan. You'd have to ask Nathan and
we
Terry.
may have to do it earlier. I think my fear right now is to spend two grand on merch and sell 5 hats and one double extra large shirt to myself.
Yeah, we don't have shirts.
Yeah,
I'm wearing a Japanese anime shirt that my brother-in-law sent me from Tokyo. But yeah. Oh, should we address the my clothing issue, Terry, which you brought up in the short to promote?
Oh, I'm the Yukari. Ken's wife's name is Yukari, and I'm just wondering if she dressed you tonight like she has before every other podcast that we've had, other than the short that you did the other night with your shirt inside out and backwards.
Well, first of all, yes, my wife does dress me. I figure if I can make my wife happy, my life is dramatically better. So I pretty much will wear whatever she sets out for me. When I did my short to promote this live episode, Nathan and I had been out having dinner at our favorite sushi place, and we go to this sushi place that we've taken Terry to, by the way, even though he
and
lives
it's
hundreds of
called
miles away.
Bobcat's Catfish Grill.
No,
it's not a
it's called
sushi place.
Sukihana.
They think it's sushi.
It's called Sukihana, and it's awesome. Sukihana, Orlando, Florida. Check it out, but don't make it so crowded that Nathan and I can't get in. So anyway, Nathan's wife
Thank you,
doesn't
Brown
like
Bait
sushi.
Company.
Yeah. Oh wow, thank you, Brown Bait Company. Nathan's
Holy
wife
crap.
is not a sushi fan, so when Nathan wants sushi, he's got to slip away, and we go have sushi. We decide we're going to make the short. We go out into the parking lot, and I'm looking at the shirt I'm wearing, and if you work in the fishing industry, every shirt you have has somebody's logo on it, and this particular logo was not a company that's supporting the Big Bass Podcast. They're a company I admire, but they're not a sponsor or anything like that. So I said, okay, I'm going to spin this shirt around. And Nathan said, nobody will notice. It's fine.
I believe I showed you a photo, Ken, and you said it was fine.
So then what he does is he backs off far away. I don't know what the shot looks like. He backs off far away enough that you can see the entire shirt draping on me and making me look like an idiot. But the shirt was backwards, but it
you don't
wasn't
need the
inside
shirt,
out.
Ken.
No, I don't need the shirt. You're right.
All right. Wow. We got to thank Funky Fisherman, who's a frequent commenter on our video.
Holy crap,
Fisherman.
Funky. Thank you,
And
sir.
then also Jason, wow, and
Holy
Kyle
crap.
Norris.
You guys
Damn,
are,
Kyle.
Hey, it's Kyle. Thank you.
You guys are
Jason.
You guys
thank
are
you.
awesome. Yeah.
That's much appreciated. Y'all are fantastic, and we do want to have merch. We really do want to have merchandise, and we want to offer caps and T-shirts, and who knows, maybe coffee cups and mugs, and who knows what.
I
Thank you.
have a question regarding the hat. Do you people out there want a Big Bass Podcast hat like Ken is wearing, or do you want one with the logo? Okay, because Ken has kind of set the stage with this damn hat that he had. I think Yukari made that thing, right? Shelby, thank you.
Shelby, thank you so much. I ordered it off Amazon. I have 2 of them. One is blue, one is red.
Yeah, so are we gonna, do people want the Big Bass Podcast logo on the hat, or okay, you want the logo?
Clay says he wants the logo.
All right, yep. And Kyle
Kyle
he
wants
wants both. Okay, Dave Richardson logo. Okay, logo on a Richardson
Is that a
112.
particular kind of?
I'm not sure what.
What's a Richardson
is.
112?
I bet it's got to be a cap. And Christopher says logo. A Richardson 112.
Brown Bait Company says just the lettering.
Just the lettering.
All right, damn it, how about definitely a
Stump
logo
Jack
hat.
says logo.
Okay.
Black.
By the
trucker
way,
hat with a logo.
I want to go get something real quick. Hang on.
Oh, thank God! I thought he'd never leave. No. Terry and I have
shirts. Kyle Norris wants shirts.
Well, we want shirts too. We do want that also. Terry and I have our running joke about who talks too much on the show, and quite honestly, I know that I talk more than he does on the show and everywhere else for that matter. But don't let on. Don't tell him I said that.
All right.
Hey, Terry, welcome back.
Hey, thanks for not talking about me while I was gone. So Stump Jack, who has been an avid supporter of the channel since its inception.
Size matters. Jason wants a size matters shirt. I like it.
We definitely need to be doing that. I've got an idea for that shirt. But Stump Jack has been a supporter. He's got a great Instagram account, which is where we met. He helps me out on the Bass Fishing Archives website. He's a phenomenal writer and a historian, just a great dude. And he was driving to Florida the other week, and he stopped by my house. And I got to meet him in the flesh. He's from Wisconsin, and he had his lovely wife with him, and we got to spend a couple hours together. And right before he left my house, he gifted me this homemade decoy.
That's very cool.
This is an ice fishing decoy that Stump Jack made. That was, I don't know how many years he had it, but it was one of his prized possessions. He made the fins out of a coffee can. Really, it's a work of folk art if I've ever seen one.
I love folk art.
It's beautiful. And Dave, thank you so much for that gift. It's a treasure I will have forever. And Ken doesn't have one.
That pains me.
Andy Herman wants a hat with a David Hayes holding the smallmouth, and on the side says, "I gave my wife the rod."
Oh, that's awesome. Or why did you lose the walleye?
No, I think Andy's playing on a different level here, Terry.
I think it is.
I think Andy's got the double entendre going in a way that Andy's hitting on all cylinders here.
Yes,
Eric,
he is.
Man, Eric, that's very generous. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Eric. Appreciate it.
Nathan, we get to eat again.
This time invite me.
Oh, okay, that's another sore subject. Terry lives hundreds of miles away. I don't know how long the drive would be, but
it's a 9-hour drive. It's a 9-hour drive to your house.
And we always invite Terry to join us at these meals, but he never makes it. He says he's coming, but then he never arrives.
Yeah, I got a flat, and then nobody helped me pick, with the flat. So
it's probably because you weren't wearing a Big Bass podcast cap, like you should have been. Eric, thank you so much.
Thank you,
Oh,
Eric.
wow. Team Bass Pack, thank you.
Holy crap! Do you
Says
fish
Terry,
big?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, and Butch is definitely someone that we want to have on the show. I don't know Butch. Butch kind of I left California in '93, and Butch kind of became a thing after I left, and but I've known of or met quite a few of the original people back in the mid '80s and early '90s that were making swim baits. I started throwing swim baits when they first came out in '87, '86. We didn't have the rods that we have today. I mean, we were essentially using our flipping sticks to throw them.
Well, now Terry and I are going to get into an ugly debate in a minute here if he wants to say
What is a swim
baits.
bait?
Yeah, let's not even start with that. The first swim bait was the K&K animated minnow, circa 1908.
Yeah. I might be gravitating more towards, the more I see some of these old articulated baits. So my eyes is that the swim bait was developed. There was two versions. There was a plastic version that came off the Dinosaur, which was made by Worm King. That was a saltwater. We didn't call them swim baits. We called them sassy shad or worm kings. I mean, it was a boot tail flipping worm, right?
As long as your forearm.
It was long. It was 12 inches long, and so you had those guys that were doing that, and then on top of that, you had the guys from Bishop, like Alan Cole. Jerry Rago would come around a few years later. It was another guy named Greg Silks. So Alan Cole made the AC plug, and Silks made the Z plug. And these guys were not bass fishermen. They were trout fishermen. They were fishing Bishop, the areas of the lakes in Bishop.
Trout fishermen or striper fishermen?
Trout fishermen. So Alan Cole was a charter member of the Brown Baggers, and in order to become a member of the Brown Baggers, you had to have 2 brown trout in California that weighed over 10 pounds apiece.
Thank you, David.
Okay? David, thank you, sir. So if you're going to Wyoming or Montana or Idaho to catch a brown, that fish doesn't count. It doesn't matter if it's 20 pounds. It had to be a fish over 10 in California. And Alan Cole had like 60 fish over 10 pounds. But what happens in the winter in the eastern Sierras is that these lakes freeze. And these guys don't want to quit fishing for 5, 6, 7 months a year. So they would go down and they would fish Pyramid, the Colorado River, and Lake Silverwood. There's an AC plug right there. That's a pretty old
plug.
one.
AC plug signed
by AC himself.
by AC
Yeah.
himself.
Thank you, Clay. We appreciate it. And anyway, so they would go down and they would fish stripers at the river, at Pyramid, at Silverwood. And I mean, they're busting in the wintertime, 20, 30, 40 pound. If they're going to the river, 50 pound, 60 pound stripers. And then they would go to Pyramid and they would catch a 20 pound striper and a 10 pound largemouth, or Silverwood, and they'd get a couple of 20 pound stripers and a 12 pound largemouth. And the largemouth would get way more pressed than the damn stripers. They're like, there's more money to be made off of largemouth. So they started targeting largemouth bass with these plugs and fishing Casitas, Castaic, Paris. And that's how that whole hardbait thing. Then you have Ken Huddleston and Chomp, who start Castaic Woodbait Company. And with great power comes great responsibility, I think.
I think you're talking about the David Hayes bombshell.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that. I mean, I give credit Ken and Nathan, because Nathan was there too. All the credit for the entire series. But
Jason Sicking just expressed his admiration for our Stephen Barden episodes, and he wants to have Stephen. Oh, Andy, I got to come back to that. Andy, I love that comment. Okay, so anyway, Stephen Barden, who is Major League Fishing's biologist and also does a lot of private work for landowners who are looking to grow bigger, better bass and their things. Stephen's been on our show a couple of times, and both episodes were really well received. Not only do we plan on having Stephen back, if he will join us again, and I hope he will, but we'd love to do a live show with Stephen, because he is just because crackling bright.
And then we could get a bunch of people asking him questions, and what better way to get your question answered by the guy that you want to ask the question to.
Yeah, Stephen is an amazing guest, a great friend, a wonderful guy. He's just, if you think he's fascinating from seeing him on the show, you just have no idea. You got to have dinner with a guy like I've had a chance to a few times, and the conversation is just so much fun. That's what's kept me in the bass fishing industry for so long, Terry, is when I get to hang out with guys and have dinner with them and have just stupidly wonderful conversations with people like Terry Battisti or Nathan Benson or Stephen Barden or Bill Dance or Edwin Evers or whoever it might be. I've been wildly privileged. Andy Leonard, who really enjoyed the Junior Sample Show. Thank you, Andy. I appreciate that comment, because the Junior Sample Show has, at least in my opinion, really underperformed. It has not been seen that many times, and I think it's a cool story. It's
hysterical. I mean, it's got big fish, it's got hoax, it's got a comedian, it's got hee-haw. I mean, You put all that stuff, Darius. Holy crap! Thank you,
Darius,
sir.
thank you so much. It's got Terry Battisti telling me I'm on crack.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, yeah, it's an amazing story. If you guys haven't watched that video,
Did you remember that, Nathan? He said I was on crack.
I remember that.
yeah, but
I've yet to receive an apology.
hold your breath.
Not
All
going to
right,
get one.
We have a lot of questions here to get to.
Oh, awesome.
Let's see. Brian the Carpenter, friend of
Brian
the
the
show,
Carpenter.
wants to know what's in
BTC.
Ken's cup.
BTC. Brian the Carpenter, our great friend. Y'all probably know him. He's a longtime producer of Ike Live, longtime producer of the Bass University. Worked with Mike Iaconelli and Pete Glusick for years and years. BTC and Nathan and I have a project that we're going to kick off next month.
Yeah, you may have
more
a
about
project
that
with
later.
BTC, but I've had his drop shot box for a month and a half, ever since the classic.
Okay, so you're actually
just-
hoarding his
Holding
tackle.
hostage. I actually sent it to him yesterday. I didn't know I had it in my boat for a month.
Okay, what's in my cup? Water.
That's what's in this one.
Yeah, right. Water in that one.
1973.
This is they're a dime a dozen, Terry. You want me to reach and get mine?
Yeah, who had this first?
BTC, Nathan and I had to get one just to catch up to Battisti. BTC,
Yeah.
Nathan and I have a project coming out soon that we're excited about, and more on that later. I'm not going to tie up the Big Bass podcast with that project, but we hope you're going to like that one too. Right now, tonight, man, just water, coffee earlier. Coffee in this one.
I had to go to a work dinner tonight, so I had a couple drinks there. I felt it was not going to be prudent to continue on while doing this.
Yeah, sometimes I have bourbon, but when I do that, I have it in my world record smallmouth bass glass tumbler. And there was one
Rub it
episode
in.
where I absolutely had too much. I think that was the one where we were talking about the record keeping organizations, where I was definitely
Ken was lit.
not safe to podcast.
Were you wearing your seatbelt?
Yeah. That was nice. We actually shot occasionally we'll shoot 2 shows when we get together to record. And that was the second of 2 shows, and I was going at the bourbon for 2 long episodes.
And when we do those shows, we actually do a wardrobe change in between. And for that second episode, Ken again came in with his shirt on backwards and inside out. And we had to straighten him out. I think Yukari had gone to the store or something.
Lies, I tell you, lies. Terry Sushi Fun. Rich, thank you for that, Rich. Thank you so
Appreciate
much.
it, Rich.
Yeah, Rich. Terry needs gas money so he can make it
Yep.
to
And-
Sukihana.
Rich also wanted to know, Ken, why don't you let Terry talk more?
Ouch, Rich! What the hell, man?
Yes,
supposed to be on
the
my
truth
side.
comes out.
I would. If he had anything interesting to say, I'd be glad to give him the floor.
Man.
From Stumpjack Outdoors, given the recent cheating incident in the walleye world, will you guys be exploring some of the cheating incidents in bass where big bass have been caught but have been deemed illegitimate?
Oh, yes. Yes,
yeah.
the 2 come right off the top of my head. They were near and dear to my heart. Sandy DeFresco, the 2.5-pound dive weight. Ken actually has the Southern California world record lure up on his shelf.
Well, this is
It's made by Kalen. It was made by Kalen. It's the world record bass kit that was made by Michael Jones and oh goodness gracious, the guy that
Al
had
Kalin.
Al Kalin came out with this 2.5-pound diver's weight. Is the world record bass kit.
Well, this thing actually weighs almost nothing, but
It's resin.
but it's a fake, yeah. But
Yeah.
but Sandy DeFresco had a 2.5-pound diver's weight in the belly of her fish, and of course that's an interesting story. We're going to get to it.
Yep.
There are a lot, Stumpjack. There are a ton of frauds out there, and we truly plan. I know this is a bold statement. We plan to get to all of them. If we live long enough, and if the podcast has the support to do them, we want to do all of them, because we're eating up with this stuff, as I think everybody can see.
It's just fun telling the story.
Problem. We have serious problems.
Yeah. The other one that right off the top of my head is a 20-pound, 8-ounce fish to 23-pound fish caught by Leah True at a spring lake in Northern California. That one itself is a interesting hoax, but the stuff that goes with it adds to it. But yeah, and then there's an Alabama fish that's kind of an interesting story.
Yeah, 2412 out of Alabama in 1926, I believe, is the one you're thinking about. Yeah, George J. Nichols.
Yep.
That's an amazing one, and that's going to be a tough one to research, because there have been a couple of books written but never published which go into that story, and so I have not been able to get my hands on them. You know, one of the things I'd love to introduce on the Big Bass Podcast, we really need to find a way to get this out better, is what I want to call something like an all points bulletin. Where we reach out to those of you watching and listening and say, hey, here's something we're desperately trying to find that will help us tell a story. If you have a lead, please share that with us. And that ties right into a great friend of ours. At the risk of outing him on the show, I won't mention his name, but a wonderful friend of ours who works in law enforcement, eaten up with big bass catching, eaten up with big bass history. Mike, we'll just say Mike for now, or we'll call him Lil Boom.
Little Boom. Interested in bass fishing history, not just big bass history. But
we call him, another story for another time. Anyway, Mike is just an amazing guy, a tremendous bass fisherman, a tremendous bass fishing talent, and also a credible resource. And we reach out to this buddy of ours, and he occasionally is able to put us in the right direction, share some of his investigative skills so that we can better track down some stuff. But wonderful guy and an amazing asset of the Big Bass Podcast.
Yep.
And I'm going to be quiet now because I talk too much.
Is there any more stuff to cover with Jim Brown? Donald Garrettson wants to know.
Yeah.
So much.
I mean, you get on the phone with Jim Brown, and again, it can be a 4 or 5 hour conversation, and you'll talk about 15 different subjects that he lived during his tenure at San Diego City Lakes. He knows about or witnessed, I would say, nearly every fish over 10 pounds that came out of those lakes. And if he didn't witness it personally, Larry Bottroff, his biologist, is the guy that weighed it, took scale samples, and measured it the whole 9 yards. So yeah, Jim is. Look
at all the people that Jim encountered and dealt with and knew so well. People like Orville Ball, people like Larry Bottroff, people like Phil J., Dave Zimmerly, Mike Long. These are the legends of California big bass fishing, and he knew everybody. Stephen Barden is in the program, baby. Come on, Steve.
We've been talking about you, Stephen. Have your ears been burning?
We were just saying that we hope you'll come back and do more episodes of the Big Bass Podcast, and we'd also love to do a live show with you as our guest and open things up to folks who cannot get enough Steve Barden. Nathan, what else we got?
Brown Bait Company. Will you guys ever do a few episodes deep diving the history of some of the lures that have caught some of these records?
Oh yeah, yep, absolutely.
Yeah, we will. Yeah, and that's very interesting, because one of the things that I have this obnoxious spreadsheets, I should say, shouldn't I, Terry? Because I've got a lot of obnoxious spreadsheets.
Yeah, because you have Excel, right? And then at the bottom it has each tab, and Ken will send me a XLS file, and there will be 15 sheets in one freaking file.
and I try to keep track of things like, okay, here's the size of this fish, here's the length, here's the girth, here's the date it was caught, here's the place it was caught, here's the size of the place it was caught, here's the rod that was used, the reel that was used, the line that was used, the lure that was used, here's the moon phase in which it was caught. I mean, we go as deep as we can.
What color were the guy's eyes? You know, I mean, DNA samples. You know, he doesn't leave any stones unturned.
But one of the things that's fascinated me, Terry, is that there is little rhyme or reason with regard to what has caught the biggest bass ever caught. It's just the whole range of lures, everything from slider worms, tiny little slider worms, to giant swim baits like we were talking about earlier. And I want to do a deep dive on that. If you look at the state records and the places where those state record fish were caught, then you've got even more things going. But most of them are small waters. So we want to do a deep dive into all that stuff. Wherever we can find common denominators, wherever we can find something actually that would help any of us catch a big fish, we want to tell that story. And here we got Steve Barden again.
Yeah, he wants to know from UCAN the largest fish ever weighed in at a Bassmaster and FLW pro level event.
Yeah, Mark Tyler has the record for the biggest bass ever caught in a BASS event, and I'm bad on this. I always get this confused.
It was
either
14.5.
I think it was 14. I was thinking it was 14.7, but I'm having trouble on the year. Was it 97 or 99? And it was in the California Delta.
It was
the Delta.
I think it was 99.
So it was probably 99. One of the ones that Robert Lee won. Robert Lee was winning everything on the Delta back then. Anyway, Mark Tyler goes in. I think it was a 14.7. He's flipping and pitching. And
the South Delta.
Yeah, and he flips in and he catches this 14.7, I believe. And I think on like his next pitch, he catches one over 8. So, how amazing is that? In 2 pitches, he's got over 22 pounds, but then you put it in a different perspective and say, well, Manabu Kurita did that in 1 cast. So FLW pro level events, it's FLW I think Bass has done a pretty poor job of keeping track of the biggest fish ever caught in BASS competition. Mark Menendez has the number 2 bass ever caught in BASS competition, by the way. But FLW has it was Richland Chambers.
Richland Chambers,
But FLW has done an even worse job historically, because for a long time, FLW did not even keep any track of the big fish caught on certain days of competition. And the FLW record is much smaller, actually. I'm not sure what it is offhand, but it took many years for them to even crack 10 pounds. Now,
they were known as the shaky head circuit, right?
Yeah,
for years.
They were Carolina rig and shaky heads. Now that MLF has taken over, they're doing a lot better job with regard to their documentation of stuff. And hey, that is in no small part due to the efforts of Stephen Barden. So, Stephen's asking that question. And I'll do a deep dive and I'll try to get back to you on the biggest ever in FLW history. But the
stats just aren't there.
Yeah, the data's not that great. But the fact that the data has improved so much on the MLFLW side is in no small part due to Stephen Barden. The data now that Stephen Barden collects is light years ahead of anything that any bass fishing organization has ever accumulated. Light years. It's the difference between shooting a bullet and throwing it. That's the difference between what these organizations have done historically and what they're doing now at the highest levels of Major League Fishing, largely due to the influence of Stephen Barden. So take that.
Question from Chris Flay. Is Billy Westmoreland the only man to catch a 10-pound largemouth and smallmouth?
I believe so.
That we know of.
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah. And not only that, he caught 2 10-pound smallies.
Yeah.
So,
and he caught a 10-pound largemouth in competition, in BASS competition, which makes it, even
in Florida
more
with 8-pound line on a spinning rod.
Yep, and a little bitty worm.
Yep.
But Westmoreland did it. And now you'd think, Now I've caught 10-pound largemouths. Terry's caught 10-pound largemouths. But for anybody who didn't, who goes out and suddenly manages to catch a 10-pound smallmouth, you should immediately hop in the car, run
And
down
drive
to
to
Florida,
or
and
OHI.
hire a shiner guide like Sean Rush, and get your 10-pounder the next day, so you can do both in 48 hours. That'd be pretty cool.
Yep.
I'd write a story about you.
Not if I got to him first.
Damn it, Terry Battisti.
Andy Herman wants to know your both of your personal best bass.
My biggest is 10.8. I've got 3 fish over 10. My problem was I left California before the swim bait craze really freaking got dialed in. When I left there, we were still using flipping sticks to throw, big swim baits. And I moved to Idaho, and that's really not a big bass capital by any stretch of the imagination. The funny thing is I caught 2 of my 10s after I left California when I went back to California in the wintertime to fish. So anyway, Can?
My biggest is 12.4. And I probably shouldn't tell all of this story because
You snagged it off a bed?
No, I did not snag it off a bed. That's horrible. I'm actually looking for a picture of it, so I can send to Nathan and he could post it. But we'll get to that at some point. We'll show it off one of these days. But I caught it when I was 12 years old.
What?
I caught it when I was 12 years old out of our farm pond. I grew up on a farm in South Carolina. I was born in Florida, but when I was 12 years old, or 11 years old, I moved to South Carolina. And
Yankee.
And I was in middle school, and I had a football game later that day. And my dad was out of town on a business trip, but my grandfather was there. And I go down to the pond, and I've got a wimpy spinning rod line that couldn't have tested more than 5 or 6 pounds because it was probably old and worn out. And I had a man's jelly worm. And I made a cast, and I think I probably set the rod down to do something else,
Take a leak?
Perhaps. Line starts taking off, so I pick up the rod, I set the hook. This gigantic fish comes out. I haul him to the bank. I take him back to the house. We got nothing to weigh this fish on. So my mom comes out of the house with the bathroom scales, and I'd weigh the fish Paul Duclos style. I get on the scale and I weigh whatever, and I get on the scale again, and it's a little more than 12 pounds difference. So I always just called it 12.4. And that's my personal best. And if I don't beat it, I'm going to be pissed off.
You need to go fishing for one.
Yeah, that's the problem. But Dr. Battisti and Nathan Benson have me working on this Big Bass podcast thing all the time, so I never get to go fishing anymore.
There's like 40 lakes within walking distance of your house. Ken lives on a golf course community, and literally the water traps there have got to have a 12 in them or a 13.
They might, but they also get pounded pretty hard. I went out and threw a swim bait a little bit the other day. Got one.
Did you throw it into the bridge?
No, that's what I did last time I threw a swim bait. I threw a, I've got it here. Should I pull it down and show what I did to it?
Yeah.
It was a Clash 9, so it was.
And it clashed.
And it clashed.
It clashed with the dock or with a bridge.
Yeah.
BTC caught his PB when he was 12 or 13 years old too. I would have had my PB when I was 14 at a Castaic. Yeah, but I was an idiot. We had weighed that week. We had probably weighed 24 fish over 10 pounds at the shop. This is back when guys would bring their fish into the shop to have them mounted. And I had a fish on. It charged the boat. It came up to the boat, jumped, and then dove. And when it jumped, I'm looking at it, and mind you, my eyes were a pretty damn good, gauge of size back then. And that fish was 11, 12, 13 pounds. It was a big fish, bigger than anything that we had weighed that week.
How old were you?
14.
He had calibrated eyes at 14, folks. Calibrated eyeballs.
Well, when you see dozens of fish come in every week that are, over 10, you get pretty freaking good at guessing their weight. And anyway,
Here's what I did to my Clash 9.
Yep.
I threw it, and there was a golf cart bridge. And I said, I don't think I can hit that golf cart bridge from here. So I'm just going to throw the crap out of it. Well, I hit the golf cart bridge hard. I hit the golf cart bridge. And that bait bounced off the bridge. I lost the lip. And it broke.
You can get another one, Ken.
I got another one. Well, here's the good news about it. I actually bought this before they became a hot commodity. I was in Osaka at the Osaka Tackle Show, and I got this for what turned out to be a steal of about $50.
Yeah,
and then
now they're 200.
Well, yeah. Well, then I have another one. I have one in Golden Shiner, a limited edition swim bait underground in Golden Shiner that my buddy Byron Childers got for me. And Byron is the national sales manager for Missile Baits, and he is also an amazing source of hard to get stuff. You'd think I could get it because I work in the fishing industry too, but Byron is way better connected than me, also smarter.
Christopher Benson, y'all crushed it on Hayes' smallmouth story. Hayes said records are
Thank
meant
you.
to be broken. If the record is broken, do you think it'll come from Dale Hollow or up north?
It's possible that it'll come out of Dale Hollow. It's possible that it could come out of a Lake Erie or a Lake Ontario. The problem that I have with Erie and Ontario is that those lakes are huge, and most of those fish are caught off of shoals in the middle of the lake. It's not like fishing Dale Hollow when you could go to a point that is going to have big fish on this exact spot. Your odds of finding that 10-pounder or 12-pounder at Erie are just astronomical. But I don't think it's going to come out of either of them. I think it's going to come out of either a lake in Northern California called Pardee, or it's going to come out of a lake in Idaho called Dorshak. And that's Matthew's listening. Yeah. So the Pardee and Dorshak have one thing in common. Actually, they have two things in common. They both have giant smallmouth, and I personally seen a fish that I would say was over 11 pounds at Pardee that was on a bed in about 15 foot of water that we couldn't get to eat. And then it came up out of that 15 foot of water into about 3 or 4 foot of water, and it was giant. We had caught some 8-pound largemouth, 9-pound largemouth the day before, and that fish dwarfed those fish. It was insane. And again, Dorshak's got these. So I lived up there. I lived 30 miles from that lake when I was going to graduate school in Moscow. And the problem with Dorshak is that it's remote. There's nothing there. It's Orofino, Idaho. The closest town would be Lewiston. And once you launch your boat at the dam, it's a 57-mile run up to where those fish are caught. You just can't catch them down by the dam. There's a specific area of the Clearwater that those fish are in. And they're all caught in the same area within a 5 to 7 mile stretch. And it's 57 miles one way. If you get stuck up there, there's nothing to get you back. But the other thing that those two lakes have in common is they both have Pardee doesn't have a natural population of kokanee, but they both have populations of kokanee salmon, which are vitamin T essentially. They don't get longer than 10 inches. 12 incher is really a big fish. and that's what those big smallmouth feed on. And that's why I think Pardee and Dorshak are going to be the two lakes that produce the next world record, as opposed to Erie, Ontario, or Dale Hollow. Ken?
Christopher, I'm going to make my answer short. The next world record smallmouth will come out of Dale Hollow.
Maybe I did talk too much that time.
No, it's just that you were wrong.
Oh,
no, we had another comment.
What did Funky say?
Yeah, what did... Can you put that one back, Nathan? Sorry about that.
Let me
missed
see.
it. Come on, Nathan.
No, he said he was listening to the Big Bass podcast on his drive to the lake when he caught his first double digit. Well, that's the thing that we haven't been talking about.
What luck we bring
everybody who listens to or watches the Big Bass podcast is going to have a shot at their personal best if you watch and listen every week. If you don't, then you're almost guaranteed to
your
lose
odds
that
go
fish.
down.
Yeah. We didn't win that. We did not win the Nobel Prize for podcasting for no reason, folks.
Thanks, Funky.
Congratulations.
Right. Yeah. Kudos.
Team Bass Pack. Some people say the next world record is going to come out of Texas. Would you guys agree? Is it going to be California or Florida?
Or what about Japan? This is such speculation, but I'd love to see it come out of Florida. I'm a Floridian. I want to see it come out of Florida. The genetics are right. California, there are not many places doing the things necessary to raise a world record in California right now, but there are some. So you got to take California very, very seriously. I do not think it's going to come out of Texas. They may have the genetics because they've imported them. I don't know about their... So did California. They imported them.
You drink imported beer?
I don't drink beer. But have another Bud Light on me.
Oh my God!
If I had to pick three places where I think the next world record would come from, I would say, in no particular order here, we'll go alphabetical: California, Florida, Japan. Dr.
there are still places in California that you don't hear about it because people finally learned when you open your mouth with a 19-pound fish, your body of water is going to get pounded. And so in the last 7 to 10 years, people have been keeping quiet. And you're not going to hear about it until it is a world record. So I'll say California. Without a doubt, Japan has to be on that list. You've got Aikihara Dam and Lake Biwa. A lot of people know about the Biwa fish. Obviously, it's a tie for the world record. But the Aikihara fish came out. It was caught a year before, and it weighed 19.7. I mean, that was a giant fish. And then my next bet to round out three, and this is going to pisses Ken off when I say it. It's OHIV in Texas. That lake goes through some new lake cycles every 7 to 10 years, kind of like what happens in California. And I mean, they've proven that they can pump out a bunch of fish in that 14 to 16 pound range. And if they just happen to hit it right, there might be a chance. But I honestly don't think Florida has a chance at all in putting out a world record fish. South Africa.
Yeah, Stephen Barden, who certainly knows more about the biological end of this than Terry and I put together 100 times. Stephen says not the U.S., but he predicts South Africa. Hey.
The thing is that you don't have any data. I haven't been able to find any data on South Africa.
I don't have data on South Africa. The other thing I would say is, okay, Stephen, the next world record, let's say it does come out of South Africa. Are we going to hear about it? Are we ever going to know about it? That's a problem. Any documented I'm sorry, Nathan, can you read the question? People want to hear Nathan's voice.
Clay Williamson, another frequent YouTube commenter. Any documented 20-plus pound bass from Cuba or South Africa?
Not to my knowledge. You hear stories all the time, or you say not all the time, but we've historically heard stories about gigantic fish coming from both of those places. The problem is that they're largely unsubstantiated, and so we don't have anything to go with that. There have been stories of 33-pound fish and 28-pound fish and 26-pound fish out of Cuba, but you're not going to see a photo of them.
Well,
You're not going to see
they
them
had
on
the same
certified
thing happen.
scales.
What was that lake in Honduras that was supposed to kick
Yohoa.
out? Yeah, Yohoa. Yeah, there's another one. The thing is that we hear about these things, and then we go down there, and 3 years later, the natives have completely gill netted the thing, and there's nothing left except tilapia. I mean, that happened in Cuba.
Yeah, that happens a lot. Hey, it happens at El Salto.
Yeah, it does.
Where nobody's approached a world record, unless you believe some of the falsehoods that come out of the marketing from places like that. But those places, Stephen may be absolutely right. It may come out of South Africa, but I'm going to be very skeptical as to whether it's going to hit certified scales and whether it's going to be certified in a way that an organization like IGFA would be willing to recognize.
Well, I remember there was a 17 that came out of South Africa, or was it 18? Back in the late 70s, early 80s. Yeah, that was it. There's 18 from Zimbabwe. Hey, Ed, what's up, brother?
Good to hear from Ed Cowan, outstanding angler from the Pennsylvania, New York
Two-time
area,
classic
two-time
qualifier.
Classic qualifier.
From the Federation, the hard way.
Yeah, the hard way, as we say, the hard way.
Yep. That 18-pound fish from Zimbabwe, I haven't heard of another fish over 15 that was caught from down there. So, Stephen, show me the data.
There have been reports of 24.5-pound fish out of Egypt. Out of Egypt, yes. I'm serious.
Were they in King Tut's tomb?
I think it was under one of the pyramids. He had to skip under the pyramid, a jig. And, Shelby Bentley loved. Oh, sorry, Nathan.
Yep, Shelby loved the H.W. Ross story. I live in Florida and never knew about Fritz Friebel either.
Shelby, Florida is, hey, make America Florida. Let me just say that. And H.W. Ross, Fritz Friebel, there is no other state that has such a rich bass fishing history as our,
you're going to make me choke.
as our state, Shelby. And I'm glad that you realize that. And thank you for watching and listening to the Big Bass Podcast.
Chris Flay wants to know, Terry, is Bob Crouppy still alive? Would be a great guest.
Yeah, he is. In fact, I own his one of his jackets, kind of a stalkerish kind of thing.
Stole it off the man's back. The man was wearing it at the time.
Yeah, it was kind of a. I mean, I could go get it. Let me go get it real quick.
Well, Bob Crouppy, Chris, as you probably know, is a retired Los Angeles motorcycle cop. And for the folks who are not very familiar with Bob Crouppy probably made the best run at the world record out of California in the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s. He had a fish that weighed 22.01 pounds, and that's about when the California run on the world record collapsed in about 2006 or so, 2007. Clay Williamson wants to say that Bob Crouppy is the greatest living trophy bass guy on the planet. Not so sure about that, Clay. Not sure. Crouppy's got some amazing credentials. No question about that. But
yeah,
that's a show, Terry. Who is the greatest? Who is the greatest trophy bass angler of all time? First of all, we got to define trophy, don't we?
We got to define greatest.
Yeah, we got to define.
There's a whole we have to come up with some definition for that, and it may be multiple definitions.
Yeah, my nominee right now is Manabu Kurita.
Yeah. All right, so here is the jacket, and this jacket, it's got a Bass patch. It's got some Bass Pro Shops patches, which is what intrigued me about this jacket. This jacket I saw on eBay about 2 years ago now. Western Bass Fishing Association, International Ambassador Club, Abu. I saw this jacket on eBay for, I think it was $15 2 years ago. And what intrigued me was the over 15-pound bass patch that was on it. And I'm thinking, I've got to know the person that owns that jacket, because it was coming out of California. It was coming out of a place called Acton, which is it's like 15 miles away from Castaic. And so I put a bid on it. I ended up getting it for $18, what they were asking for it. And a few days later, I get the package in the mail, and the return address is a girl's name, first name, and then the last name is Krupe. Like, holy crap. So I get on eBay and I write the person a note and say, hey, I got the jacket today. I want to thank you very much, but I just have one question for you. Are you related to Bob Krupe in any way? And she replied right back. And she said, yes, Bob is my dad. I said, why the hell did he get rid of his jacket? She goes, oh, he gave me a bunch of stuff to sell. It's like, holy crap. So I'm looking at her freaking, her auction, and she has nothing else from her dad. And it's like, crap, okay. And so I wrote her another email and said, would your dad be interested in me doing an interview with him? And she never got back with me. Bob's kind of gone under the radar. And
he was doing some guiding about 15 years ago. I don't know if he still does that. I think I tried to explain to the folks listening and watching that he's a retired Los Angeles motorcycle cop, and he did some high-end expensive guiding for a while in the 2000s, but I don't know if he's still doing any of that.
No, I don't think he is. Anyway, he's still alive. I talked to Danny Cadota, who was his partner for a while. Danny and I talk. We're actually going to have Danny on the show. Danny is, he's caught 18s, 17s, 16s,
19.4, I think is
19.4 is his biggest.
Yeah.
He's got 100-pound 10-fish limits, and Danny can spin a yarn.
Yes, he can.
When we have Danny on the show, it's going to be the Danny Cadota show. Ken and I are just going to be sitting here nodding our heads. But the guy
now's the gate going.
Yeah, exactly.
Danny's awesome,
So,
and he educated, trained, taught a generation of big bass anglers in Southern California how to target and approach those fish,
and it
including
all came
Bob Krupe.
It all came from his saltwater experience, every bit of it. So we won't ruin the story by telling Danny's story because we'd screw it up anyway. But.
Yeah, I don't want to ruin Danny's story, but I'll tell you what, Danny's got his own fishing rod company. I want to throw them a plug. It is Semper Fish Rods.
Yeah.
Semper Fish Rods. I think they're most of what he's got available now is saltwater stuff, but this guy is
he's the real deal.
An angler
obviously.
like so talented, so knowledgeable.
Yep. Chris Fly.
Can I answer this one?
Yeah.
But first, Nathan has to ask it.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Chris is asking, how big does largemouth or smallmouth have to be to get you guys excited?
Okay, Chris. If it's on the end of my line, it just has to be big enough to get on the hook. If it's on the end of Terry's line, it has to exceed 10 pounds.
Bastard.
No, I'm kidding. It's all about context, Chris. If I were to catch a 2-pound smallmouth here in Florida, I'd be very excited.
My biggest smallmouth, I've got a 31.5-pound smallmouth limit that was caught with a guy named Simon Frost up on Erie. That day was an amazing day. And so now to get me excited, it's going to be over 5 pounds for a smallmouth. But I would like to get my PB. My PB right now is 612. I would like to get a 7. Largemouth, it's got to be over 10. Definitely has to be over 10 to get excited.
Those are big fish. Those are big fish. Yeah, BTC again. Nathan?
I have a rolled up poncho in my pocket that's heavier than that jacket.
Well,
It does look light.
It's a California jacket.
It's easy to Brian, it's easy to stay warm when you're catching 20-pound largemouths, okay?
Exactly. I mean, this is winter attire for California and Florida. I mean,
I don't
holy
care.
mackerel.
Yeah, I don't care how cold it is. I'm going to break a sweat if I hook a 20.
There's been a couple questions about Butch Brown. Donald asks, has anyone reached out to Butch Brown?
Not yet. But believe me, it's in the works. I think the big problem that we have here, yeah, we have all these contacts in California and all these people that we want to talk to in California. But every time we do that, we skip Ohio. We skip Wisconsin. We skip all these other states that there are great stories about big fish that come out of these other states. I mean, look at, there we go. What is Ken working on right now? Ken is working on Ohio. And so there you go, Kyle. You asked for Ohio, Kyle. We got Ohio.
If it's in the blue folder, it's coming soon.
Yeah. So we brought that Massachusetts fish out by Bologna's. My Bologna's. Da, 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 da. Every time I say his name,
How did the knack get into the show?
Bologna's. My Bologna's.
No, I know, but restrain yourself, Batista.
I'm sorry. I go off on these tangents. I haven't had my medication today. Anyway.
Got another one.
Matthew asked, do you ever see any of the major fishing circuits moving into the West, maybe East Coast, West Coast divisions, the championship somewhere in the middle?
Matthew, that's not a Big Bass Podcast question, but I can answer it. I will answer it. Because I worked at BASS for a long time. And Nathan did too, actually. And I'll tell you what happens. Bass will take a tour out west, and they'll have a 3 or 4 tournament circuit out there for the Opens or something. And attendance will be pretty good the first year. And the second year, it will go down. And the third year, nobody shows up. So Bass says, okay, lesson learned. We ain't coming back here for a while. And so they don't. And
they get amnesia.
And then Bass gets amnesia, and they go back, and the West Coast audience, the California, Oregon, Washington, Arizona guys, show them again, hey, you really shouldn't have come back because we're not going to support you in numbers. The West simply doesn't support those tours, is the truth of it.
No. I actually did an analysis for Bass Fan on this same subject, probably back in 2005 or 2006. And I think it has to do with the amount that... So there's just not a population of bass fishermen in the West compared to in the South. In the South, you can't swing a flipping stick without hitting 4 bass boats. In Southern California, or let's just call the whole state of California out, there's probably more bass boats in Knox County, Tennessee than there are in the whole state of California. Okay, and then when you look at Oregon, Washington, Arizona, and Nevada, you've got maybe Anderson County, Tennessee, has more boats than those states. You just can't draw the people. And in order for these guys to fish, you're drawing people from Washington, Oregon, California, and the river states, and you're loading the field with 250 anglers, and they're having to drive 1,400 miles. Whereas if you have the southern, swing down here, or the southern division or eastern division down here for the Opens, guys doesn't have to drive more than 600 miles to get to all those events. Now the EQs now are completely different, but
Nathan, we're hearing from a buddy of ours.
Killer Bee Marine.
Yep.
Izzy
from
Morrissey
San Pedro.
is in the pod.
Yep.
Izzy's a fascinating guy, engineer buddy of ours from Southern California. Don't want to let on too much. Yeah, he's in the South right now, so welcome to America, Izzy. Welcome.
Yes.
Chapman Wolf asks, do you guys think if a share lunker type program was started in California by some miracle, the glory days of giant bass there could return? If so, how do we start that kind of program?
No. No, the problem with California is the Department of Fish and Game does not care about warm water fisheries. That's just it in a nutshell. You had an anomaly in San Diego because that was an experiment that was being conducted by some people that really it mattered to them. I'm talking about Orville Ball. I'm talking about Jim Brown. I'm talking about Larry Bottroff. And they treated that as their own laboratory. And then other fish started getting out into other lakes. Casitas, Clear Lake were the first two. And then Castaic and, other lakes started getting these Florida fish. What happened is that they essentially quit stocking trout down there. And that's what killed it. And then Casitas had problems with drought, and then they quit stocking trout there. And they just, the only thing the Department of Fish and Game in California worries about is the selling of a trout stamp. And now what the state's doing is they're taking away waters from sport fishermen. I mean, it's a huge legal battle that's going on down there. I honestly do not think that we'll ever get back to the days of the 70s, 80s, 90s, and early 2000s. But I still won't discredit California for putting out a world record. I still think they have the capability of doing it.
Oh, I'm sure Gavin Newsom will get all that straightened out, Terry.
Yeah, right. Yeah, like he's doing right now.
I can't find my Ron DeSantis figurine, but if it was within reach, I would show it.
Darkman. Thanks, Eric, brother. Appreciate it. And same with Lure Lab. Yep. Yeah, you guys live down there, man. I mean, I feel for you.
Hey, I just want to say thank you to everybody watching and listening because
Yeah.
we got over 100 people tuned in live through YouTube right now. And honestly, Nathan, Terry, and I were worried if it would just be the three of us.
Exactly.
So,
we actually were talking about that before we hit the live button.
And because we can't see Nathan right now, we were thinking he might doze off. So
Right.
this is fabulous. Thank you all so much.
Yeah.
A ton of questions, which is awesome.
Yeah.
We
How many
had
what do we
some-
got?
Another one here from our friend Steve Barton. New question: should private water records count for state and world records?
Fabulous question, Stephen. Why are you getting ahead of us? Because we do want to have a show at some point on what we'll call fair chase, for lack of for lack of a better word from what I can come up with. In hunting, they have the organizations that keep the records, Boone and Crockett and Pope and Young. They have what are called fair chase records. They say you can't hunt from an airplane or a helicopter. Any animal you kill within a high fence can't be counted and stuff like that. But fishing is pretty much just the Wild West for the most part. Some states have rules about private waters. Most states do not. Some states have rules about fish that have been stocked and are not native. Some states do not. Do I think private water records should count for state and world records?
What's the definition of a private impoundment? I mean,
Yeah, you see a lot of weird definitions about that.
yeah, every lake that you go to in California, for the most part, you have to pay to launch. Does that make it private? I mean, it's open to the public. Are we talking golf course lakes or that, nobody's allowed to fish supposedly, or, at least they weren't in California.
What's really going on here, Terry, is that Stephen is asking questions that we need to ask him when we have him.
Yeah,
on
he's
the show.
he's planning his next episode.
I see right through you, Barden.
Kevin Will is asking, when are we going to get the George Perry episodes?
Oh man, this has been as painful as the Hayes episodes. I should say like I have a turd in my pocket or something. Ken and Nathan wanted those episodes to be perfect, and I think they knocked it out of the park. Like I said, I was just Vanna White in those episodes, holding cue cards and shit.
Not at all.
But the same thing is going on with Perry. Because there's only one way to tell the story, and it's the right way. But the question is what is the right way? Do we do it in 4 episodes that are an hour and a half long? No. Ken, and maybe you folks can give us some cues. Ken wants to do it in like 15 shows that are 15 to 20 minutes apiece, and we dump them all at the same time. Is that
That's
right, Ken?
Yeah, and I'm not saying they'll all be 15, 20 minutes apiece. Some of them might be longer, but there'll be a lot of 20-minute episodes. And yeah, that's my thinking right now is let's do a bunch of them, and let's dump them all at one time, and knock yourselves out. Because for the most part, my plan would be these would not be episodes that are told in any particular order. Dive in where you want. We've got a different aspect of the story to tell. What I can say, and one of the things I'm really excited about, Terry's absolutely right. We want to do it as close to perfect as we can. And we realize that we're not going to get it perfect, but we want to tell it better than anybody else can. We want to tell it more thoroughly than anybody else. And if we can do those things, then we're going to be pretty happy. Well, the Perry thing, just like in Hayes, we've got information on the Perry thing that I think nobody else has. We've looked at it longer. We've looked at it more carefully. And I think we're going to blow the doors off that story. We also have some goals with that story. So we want to do it right. And I think right also would be cool if we could find a company that would sponsor all those episodes. That'd be another big deal to us. Because, again, once you tell that Perry story, you can't go back to it in 6 months or 2 years and tell it again, because you've got the toothpaste out of the tube and there it is. And our goal with every episode of the Big Bass Podcast is to tell it so well and so thoroughly that not only are we not going to do it again, but nobody else would try it. It's pretty cocky, I know. That's what the door slam is, by the way. If you have ever watched or listened to us all the way to the bitter end, the last thing you hear on the show is the door slam, and that was my thing. Because my attitude was that when we finish a show, we want anybody who might have been thinking about doing a show on that topic to hear the door slam and know that they're too late, that it's been done, that they can't do it more thoroughly or more authoritatively than we can. And it's cocky, but without that kind of cockiness, I don't think we can do a very good job.
Well, why do something if you're only going to do it half-ass, right? I mean, if my military friends went out on a mission, you know, and said, "Oh, we're just going to do it half-ass," I wouldn't have that many friends left. You know, I mean, I tried to hang out with people that do stuff 100%, and you know, that's why I hang out with you, Ken, because you get the same attitude.
I know where to
do it right.
I know where to get good cheap sushi. That's why you hang out with me.
Yeah.
A suggestion here from L. Royson. You guys need to do a show giving folks a guide on what to do if you catch a potential record bass.
Oh, that would be a good one.
Yeah, that's a great idea, El Royce, and thank you for that one.
Absolutely.
If we're not going to put this out there, but we've got a massive list with hundreds of episode ideas that we filter through every month or so.
When Ken pitched this idea to me, I don't know, almost a year ago, he said, let me send you what I've got right now in my spreadsheet. And whenever he says that, I know I'm in for this unbelievable bit of data.
Tedium.
And there was 289 topics that you wanted to cover?
Yeah, and
then I added like 40.
That's actually like, yeah, we could easily double that number in no
time. We could do this for the rest of our lives. And then the beautiful thing is that you guys in the comments after each one of these videos keep putting stuff up there that we hadn't even thought of. Like your El Royson's comment right now. I mean, yeah.
Steps
and that's a good one. That's a great topic.
Because El Royson, nothing would bring us greater pleasure than someone blowing a world record because they don't watch the Big Bass Podcast.
Exactly.
We might never stop laughing.
Oh, or crying.
Only if it was one of us.
Yeah.
I'm kidding, but that is a great idea. We need to do that.
Bobby Colson.
Do you have a show on the Cuba fishing in the 70s planned? Because we don't yet.
The Cuba fishing in the 70s boils down to about 8 or 10 days, because I think it was only about in 1977 when Field and Stream sent a group out there.
No, there was actually American bass fishermen went down there 3 times.
That's right.
American
Ray wanted to go. Ray Scott wanted to go for a
But
while.
when golly, what was that guy's name? Ray wanted to go, but when the guy that had American Angler
Dan White?
set up Dan White, when Dan White sets up the thing to go down there, and anybody that was going to go to Cuba had to go through Dan White, that's when Ray Scott said, "I'm boycotting Cuba." Remember that?
Oh yes, I love Ray Scott.
I'm boycotting Cuba.
But
you know,
Ray-
and he had
Ray sometimes did some.
He had
funny things.
2 or 3 Scott on the lines, his editorial that he had at the front of the magazine. He had 2 or 3 months in a row or issues in a row that were why we're boycotting Cuba.
Yeah,
and
after
it was all
Dan White
because Dan
beat
White.
him to Cuba. After
Yeah.
he beat him to Cuba, Ray suddenly decided, going to Cuba is un-American, and and we should all boycott that.
But
Ray was amazing.
I'm going to plug the Bass Fishing Archives right now. I actually have 2 articles on those trips in Cuba on the Bass Fishing Archives website. So if you go to bass-archives.com, the front page will come up, and then there's a search bar, on the right, and just type in Cuba, and it will pop up the 2 stories that I've done on that.
Great stuff
they're
on
interesting.
bass-archives.com. You search any old term from, say, the 70s and earlier, you're going to find everything you're going to want to find there. It's authoritative because of Dr. Battisti.
Terry.
Oh, can I call you Terry? I'm not allowed to call him Terry privately, only on the show.
LP Shooter says, please do the Alabama one. I guess
Oh,
it's
trust me.
talking about the record.
Yeah, George J. Nichols, 1926. Briefly, this long, the world record.
Yeah.
Yeah, we will do that, LP Shooter, because the problem with that one is not that it's not an amazing story. The problem with that one is gathering the information. It's really tough to get the information. As I mentioned earlier, there are a couple of books written by people who have now passed away that have never been published. I've seen excerpts of these things, and if I could get my hands on the manuscripts, we'd have done it by now.
Yeah.
It's a bear. I've purchased multiple books about Demopolis, Alabama history in hopes of finding snippets of this, only to be disappointed. I've spent hundreds of dollars.
Isn't that where Boyd lives? Isn't that where Boyd lives? Doesn't Boyd know?
Boyd he used to live there. Boyd lives in Gunnersville now.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Talk about Boyd Duckett, of course. Duckett lives in Gunnersville. He's got an amazing house. Whew. I stayed there and
He just got penalized for fishing off of his dock during off limits.
You cannot
hear
reach
about
the
that?
water. Well, yeah, I guess you could. I didn't know.
He has a dock.
He does have
He was
a dock.
fishing crappie off of his dock, and he had to
Yeah, he
DQ
does. He does have a little
himself.
dock. I mean, the dock is in this little inlet. It's not like you're. That's hardly.
It's like, come on, Boyd, you own MLF. Don't you know the rules?
Well, he's a part owner of MLF. But anyway, yeah,
my
that's
God.
a pretty stupid way to get DQ'd. Come on, Boyd. Come on. You're one of the smartest guys in the sport. Come on. Nathan, what do we got?
Bill Capps asks, has there ever been a smallmouth bass caught in Alaska?
No, sir. There's been one largemouth bass caught in Alaska, and it was caught 4 or 5 years ago, and it looked like it had been dragged down a dirt road for about 100 miles.
The Alcan Highway.
Yeah, it was to say that I'm skeptical of that catch would be an understatement. Maybe it was caught and everything is good about it, but until the 2010s, no bass had ever been reported caught out of the state of Alaska, largemouth, smallmouth, spot, you name it, nothing.
Stephen Johnson asks, how did you all meet?
We have the same
On the
probation
internet.
officer.
I called Ken out of the blue one day. I needed some, I think it was, I needed scans of the Flippin' series that Dave Myers did with D. Thomas and Dave Glebe. I called him out of the blue because I figured of anybody that would have those issues, it would be him. Because I was doing an article. Can't remember who I was doing the article for. I called him up, and next thing you know, we're emailing back and forth. And That was what? That was a long time
That was a
ago.
long time ago. I don't think we actually met in person until maybe 2010. Is that possible?
Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah, because we emailed back and forth probably for 2 years or 3 years, something like that.
Yeah, and then we actually met in the lobby of the main Classic
Hilton or
Hotel
the Marriott in Birmingham.
in Birmingham. Yeah,
Yeah.
I walk in and this large individual walks up to me, and I'm thinking, this can't be good.
Gene Gilliland.
Jane, here we go.
Oh, because history matters. Keep up the good work. Thank you, sir. That
Thank you,
means a
Gene.
lot coming from you.
Gene is the conservation director for BASS, long-time standout biologist for the state of Oklahoma, one of the most knowledgeable guys you'll ever run into, Bass Fishing Hall of Fame inductee.
Yep.
Gene will chuckle at my saying that. Wonderful guy. Wonderful guy, long time bass guy. You know, when I knew Gene for many years before he retired from Oklahoma and got his position at Bass, and still the conservation director there. And if Bass is smart, they will keep him for as long as they possibly can.
Ditto.
South Jersey fishermen Ken and Terry, how many of these state record bass percent-wise have actually been caught on swim baits or large baits?
Very small.
I would say it's 5%.
I would
That's
say it's
something
less.
we agree on.
I would say it's less than that.
It's got to be less than that. Yeah, I mean, California's state record was caught on bait, right? Well, it depends. If you're looking at Krupe,
Mike
Krupe
Arujo.
caught his Arujo. So that was supposedly on a Renoski swim bait, right?
Yeah. Arujo is the official state record in California.
Yeah, and then, golly, I don't think any other one's been caught. So that would be 2%.
Yeah, very, very, very small. Not many. And it's because not that many, if you really want to get down to the bass fishing population, it's only a very small percentage of those bass fishermen who throw swim baits, an appreciable amount of the time.
And then look
at least historically.
I mean, it's only come on for the last, and I'm talking, it was big in California in the mid 90s through today, but it didn't come out east until I would say 5 years ago, is when it really gained some steam. Buka Buka started pushing it hard with the bull shad in the 2010s, something like that.
Yeah.
But
Mike
even
Buka,
then,
great swim bait manufacturer, the Buka shad.
bull shad.
The bull shad, I'm sorry.
That's the bait that he's got
the
a
bull
ton
shad
of.
is what he's most famous for. He's been making that for at least 20 years, I think, or close to 20 years.
No, not 20. He
Not
didn't
20?
start.
Okay.
No, I think that was about 2007 or 2008.
Okay.
So,
my
okay,
bad.
15. We'll say 15 years.
Or at least 15. At least 15.
Yeah. But, I mean, we had, what was the guy that came out and did Southern Trout Eaters?
Matt Peters?
Matt Peters, He came out here and tried to get people to start throwing swim baits out here. He made the CD Southern Trout Eaters and had a website and the whole 9 yards, and he did that in the early 2000s, and still nobody picked up on it. So,
Well, I did a profile of Matt Peters in Bass Times back in about 2008, 9, something like that. And because I wanted to support him trying to get the swim baits really moving in the Deep South. And he was making some inroads. Now, of course, now I think he's back in California, so kind of his effort at making that push is over. But other guys are making that push to bring swim baits to the Deep South. Mike Gilbert is pushing his working class zero baits, which are terrific, into this part of the world and finding some traction. And I think that Mike Gilbert is, apart from being a fascinating guy, you can find his stuff at workingclasszero.com. He's got an amazing series of videos that he does here on YouTube that you should check out. He has within his series of videos, and he's made about 100 over 8 years or something like that. So he doesn't make them very fast, but when they come out, they're worth watching. Within his YouTube library, he has a series of videos he calls Theories on Swim Baiting. And if you're interested in swim baiting, I would recommend you absolutely watch that. Don't ever turn off Big Bass Podcast, but do watch that. Anyway, what I think Mike Gilbert is doing that's so smart is he makes soft swim baits. and he is introducing soft swim baits to Florida and things like that. Because here in Florida, we're kind of hesitant to throw the big wood stuff because we're scared to death that an alligator is going to eat it, and we're out $100, $200, whatever it might be, and that's not cool.
Yep. Team Bass Pack.
Yep. What's the record spotted bass?
Well,
11.
hold on for 10 minutes, and we'll give you a new number because it keeps getting broken.
Bullard's Bar has destroyed the spotted bass record numerous times, many times within hours of each other. It's what, 11, 12 or something like that now?
It changes so fast, and I hate to do a cop out on that because it's not my goal to tell you.
Wait, I have it.
Yeah,
The Big Bass Podcast.com.
there you go.
We're going to go there, and we are going to... Come on, load.
If you now the
Go to
world
records. World record largemouth, world record small, state record spotted. Okay, so state record spotted bass, go down to California. It's 11 pounds, 5 ounces, caught by Nathan Hilligoss out of New Bullard's Bar Reservoir, February 20th, 2022.
Yeah, Bullard's Bar has just destroyed. In the 80s, it was Lake Paris in California.
Yep.
that
70s and
exploded
80s.
80s in California that Paris was killing it because into the 80s, the record was still out of Smith Lake in Alabama by Philip Terry.
I thought oh man, I got to go back and check that.
It did not get broken until the mid 80s, I think.
I thought it was broken in the early 80s, like 81, 82.
Well, Philip Terry caught his record in.
Philip
Terry caught his record in 77, got it certified in 78 because that fish sat in a freezer a long time. And Philip Terry was the last spotted bass record outside the state of California. Philip Terry, we're looking for you, brother.
Yeah.
We're looking for you.
Yep.
We want to do that story.
We definitely want to do that story.
Because those fish in California that broke Terry's record all came out of Smith Lake. They are Smith Lake spotted bass.
Yeah, they are.
Little Rich asks, what is the most unbelievable lure used for a record bass? Cheese nuggets and vitamin T aside, I'm thinking about early baits with marginal hooks and split rings.
Well, that's a really interesting question and a tough one. I think that that there have been so many baits that you wouldn't think would catch a giant fish, but which have, and that's a hard one. The most ridiculous. Hey, I'll say this: there was a fish out of El Salto or Guerrero in the 70s. It was on Roland Martin's TV show. This guy was claiming he had caught a 19 on a helicopter lure. And I got to think that ranks pretty high.
And that's actually on video.
It's actually on video. You can watch Roland and whoever he's out there with fishing.
And these two guys come up to Roland's boat.
We call BS.
You caught it on the helicopter lure? Roland was aghast. He couldn't believe it. Oh my God, what a bad promo.
Yeah.
It's got to be on YouTube.
Not the finest hour of bass fishing programming. But probably better than anything that ever came out on the Fishing Hole. I'll say that.
Oh God, I love that show.
That's so sad.
Virgil Ward's show. I loved all those shows. Holy mackerel! The only one that I didn't like was American Angler with John Fox. Oh.
John was an interesting character. Oh my gosh, we need to do a John Fox story because John...
He's got 4 fish over 20.
Yeah. John, who passed away a few years ago at the age of about 90, I think. I liked John personally, just such an engaging guy. But when he moved to Florida in the 80s or 90s and started guiding out at the Stick Marsh, he would run ads in Bassmaster magazine claiming multiple fish over 20 pounds. And one of his keys to doing that was the fact that you weren't allowed to keep a fish out of the stick marsh. You had to release them. So he was using these measurement formulas of his own devise to come up with some of these weights. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of easy to crack 20. And I'm not saying he had some bad scales in the boat. I'm not saying that. I'm saying maybe he had some bad scales in the boat.
Yep.
That could make your
JP. Sorry you missed it, man. I don't know. We're going.
JP,
we were gonna do this for an hour and a half, and we're already 20 minutes over. So
I'm having fun. I hope
Same
the
here.
folks who are watching and listening are having a good time. If they're having half as good a time as I am, then that's fabulous and amazing and surprising. But we still got 97 folks tuned in to our live show.
Wow, that's insane.
And thank you all so much.
Dustin Grant wants to know who the coolest person you've met in the fishing industry is.
I would answer for Terry, but modesty prevents me.
Again, it's how you define cool. I mean, Bill Dance. I mean, I would be remiss if it wasn't him. I mean, there's been a lot of really cool people that I've met. You know, I've met a lot of them.
Does it get cooler than to meet Bill Dance or Rick Clunn or, in my case, David Hayes or Ray Scott or Bob Cobb or, I mean...
And I've met every one of those except for David Hayes. Never got an opportunity to you had a chance to meet Billy Westmoreland.
Westmoreland was an amazing guy.
That would have been awesome.
Yeah,
You know,
I've had more opportunities than Terry has because Terry's gone out and earned a nice living for himself. Where I'm relying on these donations through the chat here to
God.
it's not that bad.
If we go back to the Big Bass podcast topics, I actually stayed at Mike Long's house one time. That was a pretty big deal back in, I think it was 2006 or 2007 when I did that.
Huge deal.
I
know Mike pretty well. One of these days, I want to extend an invitation for Mike to join us on the Big Bass podcast.
Absolutely.
I'd like to hear his side of that story.
Yep.
Yeah, but so many cool people, and most of the people I know, most of the people in my phone contacts list are people I've met through bass fishing, and I hate to think of how sad my life would be if I had never discovered bass fishing and got into it. My life would be a sad little shadow of what it is now.
Yeah, I think you said something about, all your friends that you have are bass fishermen.
Pretty much.
It's pretty much the same with me. I've had a professional career for 30 years now, and I have friends at work. But the people that when I get home, and if I get on the phone or I get on the internet, it's all bass fishermen.
I know Terry
100%.
Battisti and Nathan Benson because of bass fishing.
Yeah.
I would not know either of those guys. I know Brian the Carpenter. He and Nathan and I are about to start another podcast. I know Brian the Carpenter because of bass fishing.
Yep. Anything else, Nathan?
Yep. Rich again. How many record bass do you think have been caught on JDM baits?
Approximately 0. Rich, I'm not saying 0, but I'm saying it's a tiny number. It's a tiny number because you got to keep in mind, most record bass are caught through luck. Let's get that out there. Most record bass are caught not by somebody targeting a record bass, not by somebody who even knows what the record is most often. And when you consider how few JDM baits are really out there, Japan domestic market, then it's practically nothing.
Well, just look at it this scientifically, all right? What are the last 3 records that were caught? All right, so last year we had the smallmouth record caught out of Ontario, right? That was caught on a tube or something, wasn't it?
Yeah.
We had the spotted bass. I think that was caught on a Senko. That was caught out in 22.
Okay, so soft plastics rule.
Yeah. What was the last? I mean, I don't even know what the last state record largemouth. When was the last one caught? I mean, I guess I could go to the website and look.
Yeah, we can do that, but
we got all that data on the website. But you got a spreadsheet probably right in front of you too. So,
of course I do. Why wouldn't I? There have been a number, but in 2016 the Delaware record was set, and that fish was caught on a Strike King spinnerbait. Let's see what else I got later than that. In 2019, the Kentucky largemouth record fell to a 6-inch plastic lizard. It's not going to be very many JDM baits, Rich.
and then the other thing is that the JDM baits did not get to the United States until the mid 90s. So they don't have a very long play. And then they hit the West Coast, and just like everything else, everything that hits the West Coast, it takes a long time to filter east. I mean, how long did it take guys in the South to pick up, actually go out and buy a Senko? I mean,
it took 4 or 5 years for the Senko to catch on.
Yeah, absolutely.
People like to ask me, did the Senko win Best of Show at ICAST in 1995 or 96? And I'm thinking, well, it probably wasn't entered.
It wasn't entered because it was JDM. That bait was being sold only in Japan for the first 5 years it was made.
It was not an exciting bait. It is the dullest bait you've ever seen. And it just happens to be arguably the best bait ever made. Arguably, I think. Mm-hmm. But anyway, yeah, not many on the JDM front. What else we got, Nathan?
Jason says he loves that Terry has backup glasses.
Oh, Jesus. Yeah, it's what happens when you get old. These are my computer glasses, and these are my talking to people glasses. So, yeah, it sucks.
Now, a good one here from Chris. He asks, have you ever seen a photo of a giant fish but could never put the story together of the fish?
Oh, God. Yeah, that's a daily occurrence here.
Yeah, a lot, Chris. It happens a lot. And there's a lot of cases where I think photos have been faked, but unless you can get a copy, unless you can get the original,
the negative,
you can't really make that determination in an authoritative way. I think that that the most recent alleged photo of George Perry with his record largemouth is an absolute fraud, just a joke of a fraud. But without the negative or the original digital image, even the FBI can't make a determination on it, because I've tried to get some of that done. But yeah, it happens all the time.
Follow up to that, is there a chance to do an episode on all those old-timey pictures of huge bass caught back in the day, real or not?
There's another cool one. That's another good idea.
It is, but that's a tough one because there are, and Terry, what all those old pictures have in common, don't you?
They're black and white.
They all come out of Florida.
Exactly.
They all come out of Florida because that's where all the big fish were.
So they're all hoaxes.
Back in the day. No, they're not all hoaxes. But what happens more often than that, because there are a lot of pictures of fish that have got to be 12, 13, 15, maybe 16 pounds. But the biggest fish that we hear about, including out of Florida, most often there is no picture. But quite often there's a lot of substantiating evidence, which makes them legit. And anybody who hasn't listened to our very first episode or watched it on a guy named H.W. Ross, he caught a 23-pounder out of Central Florida in 1884. And I think Terry and I both believe that was absolutely a legitimate catch. But there are no photos because it was 1884, and unless H.W. Ross dragged that photo to a Civil War battleground, which was over by then, or a photo studio, there was simply no way to get a picture made of that fish. Instead, he sent the maxillary bone and the skeleton of the fish to Forest and Stream magazine to substantiate it. But anyway, yeah, as many giant pictures of fish as there are, unfortunately, there are a lot more catches that were lost without a picture.
Yeah. I mean, even in the 20s and the 30s, it was tough to get a picture of a fish.
Yeah.
You know, it's not like today where everybody's got a camera in their phone.
Yeah, now you don't. Yeah, now your phone is the least thing a lot of people do with their phone is talk on it.
Yeah.
And Terry's always busy taking selfies and pictures of his food and stuff like that.
Exactly. You just check my Instagram account out.
I think Kyle's asking earlier, but when we were talking about where the next world record could come from, he asks, "What about Australia?"
Go ahead, Terry.
They don't
Break
have
his heart.
largemouth bass.
Break his heart. Yeah, there you go.
They don't have largemouth bass in Australia. They have a fish that they call a bass that kind of looks like a bass, but it's different. They don't get that big. And then they have the Murray cod, which are the biggest documented freshwater fish that exist. You know, they get approaching 100 pounds. Oliver Nye, who's a good friend of mine, he just got back from fishing in Australia. I think they had a 70-pounder that they caught on a swim bait. Wow. But then they have another. I think they actually have a fish down there that they call the black bass, but it's not a black bass that you would.
It looks quite similar.
It looks similar, but it's black. You know, there's really no color. It's grayish black. It's not the same fish.
And when I'm hearing Terry talk about this, one of the things I'm thinking is it makes it even more impressive that a guy like Carl Jochimson could come out of Australia and compete effectively at the highest level in the U.S.
Yep.
So kudos to Carl.
Yeah, it says a lot of his, abilities. Just a damn good fisherman.
But
and the crazy thing is most of their tournaments down in Australia are fished at night. They don't fish during the day, from what I understand.
But let's go back to something that Stephen Barden said on one of our shows earlier, where Stephen was our guest. If they were to introduce largemouth bass to Australia, turn this new species loose on what they've already got down under, then the chances of them growing a world record in 12 or 15 years might be pretty significant.
But having just been down there for 10 days, there's no way in hell that will ever happen. I mean, they are, when you think of extreme environmentalists, that's the Aussies. They don't want anyone to screw up their Darwin experiment that they have going on down there. I mean, they have like 50 different species of mammals down there that don't exist anywhere but in Australia. And the same with fish. So there's no way.
They also have pretty much all of the most poisonous snakes, which is why I will not be visiting Australia.
Oh, they're not just poisonous snakes. They've got scorpion. They've got all sorts of stuff. I mean, everything down there wants to kill you.
I want no part of Down Under. I want no part of that.
Yeah.
What do we got, Nathan?
Brown Bait Company just commented on the H.W. Ross episode, saying that he was impressed with your research on that one.
Thank you very much. That was a lot of tedium, but a lot of fun. Yeah, we had to dig pretty deep to locate Mr. Ross.
I think the coolest thing about that is that we knew that was going to be our first show. We knew it. It had to be our first show. And Ken did not know who H.W. Ross was until a week before the show aired.
Well, we had read his name for decades. We
his name.
had read his name. But we didn't really know who he was because I had kept running into brick walls, brick wall, brick wall, brick wall. And all we knew about him was H.W. Ross. Ross is a pretty common name. H.W. doesn't get me much closer. We didn't know where he was from. We didn't know. We knew he. I think we saw a passage about this. It's a paragraph in Henshall's second book.
More about the black bass.
More about the black bass in 1889. It's a paragraph. That's all there is. And it did say that he lived in Jacksonville, or he was visiting Central Florida. It didn't say he was from Jacksonville. I found that out later. It said he was visiting Central Florida. So I didn't know if he's from Ohio or Wisconsin or where, but he was visiting Central Florida. Okay. And I tracked him down through newspapers.com, and I got a lead on who he was. He was obviously an outdoorsman, bass fisherman, occasional hunter. All right, now I'm getting somewhere. I found out that his uncle was a guy named Shipley, who was famous as a hotelier, let's say. He ran a few hotels in Florida. All right, now I gotcha. His name was Shipman. So I said, okay, now I gotcha. I know who your uncle is. So I dig into his uncle, and I've got to find out who Ross's parents are. So I search Shipman's relatives, nothing. Nobody named Ross. I search Shipman's wife. Nothing. Something. What the? But then I found out Shipman had another wife later, and one of her siblings married somebody named Ross. Boom! At that point, I had clippings. At that point, I could go on to Ancestry.com and I could find him and I could nail down that he was in all the right places that I needed him to be to back it up and pull it together. He was going to be the right age. He was exactly the right guy. That was a revelation to me. And I got all that because I worked on it hour after hour after hour after hour. Finally got it just like less than 24 hours before we recorded the episode.
Exactly. I remember that phone call. It was like, I found him! It's like, who the hell did you find? Because there was no way in hell he had found H.W. Ross. Yeah, it was. You spent 40 years looking for that guy.
I spent decades looking for that guy. I spent 40 years looking for that guy. The other guy I spent decades looking for, and I found him 6 or 7 years ago, was Jack Page, the guy who fished with George Perry in 1932, when Perry allegedly caught his world record. I found him too. And we're going to tell the story of Jack Page as well. And my big mistake in that was I told another guy that I found him. And the other guy beat me to publishing a story. Yeah, that wasn't cool. I wasn't happy about that.
No.
But it wasn't much of a story, so I'm not too worried about it. Another question.
Yeah, on that subject, Chris asked, do you know where George Perry's lure is today?
Love the question, Terry. If you don't mind my jumping in. I know George Perry's son, who's also named George L. Perry instead of George Washington Perry, and his nickname is Daisy, as in Lazy Daisy. That's what his dad used to call him. And I asked George, the son, I said, whatever happened to that bait? Whatever happened to that tackle box? Whatever happened to that rod, that reel? He said, well, Dad was a big horse trader. Dad rarely held on to anything very long. He probably traded it for a gun or another fishing rod or another fishing lure or something like that. So he said it almost certainly wound up being traded away to somebody else. So we'll never know.
Interesting question here from Paul English. I've heard from American servicemen that Saddam Hussein's sons had planted largemouth bass in the waters around the palaces in Iraq. Have you heard this?
Okay, so I have friends that stayed at the palace that were in the military. I have not, and two of them are bass fishermen. I have not heard that. So now I'm actually going to North Carolina this weekend to fish a tournament with one of them, and I will see the other one, and I will ask both of them if there were largemouth bass in the ponds around the palace. I will ask that question and get an answer.
Paul, thank you. You're going to drive Terry nuts for the next few days. Thank you for that, Paul.
That's a good question.
I like it.
Gene again asks, how does the change in species definition affect these records, i.e. Alabama bass versus spotted bass?
Love the question. And Gene,
Golly, you
It's the
should answer
fault
that.
of it's the fault of people like you who are involved with the American Fisheries Society and who are too smart for their own good, who learn all these genetic facts about these fish and decide that, oh, there's the Alabama spot and there's the Henshaw spot and there's the this and there's the that. And so when I first got serious about the bass species and catching them and so forth, there were maybe 6, 7, 8 members of the Micropterus genus. Now there's maybe more than double that. I like to look at it in a positive way, Terry. I figure that's just more shows for us.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But I mean, yeah, I mean, what was
Well,
the fish? What was the Terry fish out of Smith Lake? What was that?
That's an Alabama spot. Yeah, that's an Alabama spot, absolutely. But you know, in reality, the answer to Gene's question, thank you for the question, Gene, is actually quite simple. These records are determined by the record-keeping organizations. So, and what you find is kind of interesting and bizarre and maybe even ridiculous on some level is that IGFA will keep records in these categories, and the Freshwater Fishing Hall of Fame will do it in these other categories, and every state will then do it 50 other ways. So, okay. Don't try to defend yourself now, Gene.
I'm a lumper, not a splitter.
Well, you know how it is.
Yeah.
I mean, in that scientific community, Terry, and you know this because you work in that scientific community, a lot of these biologists, these fisheries biologists, they'll get published in the AFS big publication.
It's a PhD for a lot of people, right? You know, to discover a new subspecies of fish or genus or whatever. I mean, that is a PhD degree. All of a sudden, you're put on a pedestal, and people fan you with palm fronds and feed you eggs and stuff. And yeah, it's
Sorry, Gene, I didn't mean to lump you.
yeah.
With those others.
No, it's I don't know, Gene. I don't know how you take care of it.
I think it's cool. I think it's fascinating. I think it's more fodder for us. So I'm not opposed. But let's boil it down. There are a handful of records that really matter in our community, and high above all of them is the largemouth bass, which also includes the Florida largemouth bass, and then below that, in terms of interest and monetary influence and so forth, you have the smallmouth, and then you have the spot. For the most part, people are not as interested in the other species because they don't have access to them. They may have access to a couple of them, but not to many of them. Now, if you live somewhere around that Georgia-Alabama state line, you can just about catch everything on the list except maybe the Guadalupe in a weekend if you really wanted to make the effort.
Yep.
South Jersey fisherman is asking, what do you think it takes as an angler to catch a record-sized fish? How long do you think it takes for someone to fish before catching a fish of that caliber?
Oh God.
South Jersey, I think that you've already blown your best chance. Your best chance is when you went fishing for the very first time and had no idea what you were doing. Now that you've blown that beginner's luck opportunity, you're screwed.
I think that there's only a certain number of bodies of water that are capable of producing records, and not many people get an opportunity to fish those places. I think the odds are way low. I mean, it's million to one.
It is.
Even guys that are targeting these fish, it's still.
But you make the best point. It's South Jersey, if you're fishing in the right places, you've just done more to increase your chances than anything else you can do. You don't need to cast better. You don't need to tie a better knot. You don't need to be better at bait selection. If you've just put yourself on the waters that are capable of producing that quality fish, you've just done more for yourself than anything else. And the next thing you can do that'll really help you is spend as much time on the water as possible.
Yeah.
And while you're doing that, learn to tie better knots and choose better lures. But by far, fishing the right places and being out there a lot are the most you can do.
Yeah. So if you're trying to break the New Jersey state record for largemouth, smallmouth, I mean, I'd go fish the lakes that are known for producing the biggest fish.
That have
That's
produced
the only thing I could say.
8s, 9s, and 10s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ted Lincoln's
Ted Lincoln,
Fishing
what's up,
Life.
brother?
He's asking if you know about the bass in the Philippines.
I don't. I assume that they got there because we, as Americans, took them over there either after World War I or before or after World War II. But I had no idea that there were bass in the Philippines, Ted.
I didn't either. Where is the Philippines
Philippines is,
in terms of latitudinally?
it would be north of Australia. So we're talking, yeah. So we're talking, I would say lower in latitude than Florida on the southern hemisphere.
Okay, but the southern hemisphere, not the northern hemisphere. So is it roughly the equivalent of Florida?
Yeah, it's the equivalent, but it's
on the other
season
side
is opposite, right?
It's below the equator.
So Ted says that the biggest bass he's ever hooked was in the Philippines. Wow, that's cool. I had no idea. So,
Hey, there have been some giants from below the equator, like we're talking about Yohoa in the Honduras. Certainly reports out of giant fish from other parts of South America. Not a lot of substantiation, but a lot of reports.
yep.
Izzy's asking, do you guys believe the advancements in
Izzy?
sonar will have a big impact, small impact, or no impact on potential future records?
We've talked about this, I think, a couple times.
I think, Izzy, I think that if they had had forward-facing sonar in the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s in California, they'd have broken the largemouth record multiple times.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And that's the reason they're producing all these records out of O.H. Ivy, or that's why they're catching a lot of those fish out of O.H. Ivy. Guys like Josh Jones have become really proficient at identifying a big fish so that he knows, and if you listen to any of the interviews done with Josh Jones, whom I don't know personally, but obviously a skilled angler, he knows exactly what a double-digit fish looks like on his electronics, and he's not making a cast unless he's looking at a double-digit fish.
Yep.
Izzy! We love Izzy.
Walleye Channel is asking, is it possible to grow a southern record on an alewife diet?
Well, you know they've got alewives in Dale Hollow. So, yeah, they're already growing southern records on smallmouth bass anyway. I don't know how far south an alewife can live. As far as I know, we don't have them down here in Florida. I've not heard of them maybe in California. But that's a great question for Steve Barden when we get him back.
The thing about the alewife is it is essentially a freshwater smelt, and smelt are noted for being real oily fish, and it's those oils that are, I mean, it's what makes trout, so potent for a diet, is that they got the right type of food makeup.
Bobby Colson is asking, what are y'all's feelings about line class records?
Uh-oh. Terry, that's probably for you.
We have different. Ken thinks that that line class records are dumb.
I think they're boring.
Boring. Okay, but catching a 4-pound or a 10-pound fish on 4-pound line isn't boring.
No,
I have never done it. But I have caught 6 and 7 pounders on 4-pound. It's pretty freaking exciting. I think fishing light line or going out and maybe not targeting a 12-pound class record or a 14-pound class record or all this other stuff, but fishing light line for big fish has always been something that I've enjoyed doing.
I would only say this. I think line class records are mostly boring. I think that when a guy like Danny Cadota or Bob Krupe has a line class record, they didn't go out trying to set a line class record. They went out trying to catch a world record, and they were using lines that they thought were necessary to catch that caliber of fish.
100%.
I have tremendous respect for that. They were using super light lines because they were dealing with crystal clear water. More power to them. Those guys are superior big bass anglers. Now, there's another class of angler out there who is going out there saying, well, I'm going to fish with 2-pound line, and I'm going to target a 3-pound smallmouth because I know that'll set my state record for a 2-pound line. And I know some guys who do that. And the one thing they share, or one thing they seem to have in common, is they are wankers. And
God, tell us how you feel.
and I, they bore me to tears. I don't. We're eventually going to do some line class records because there are some line class records out there that are interesting, that are absolutely fascinating. And I can't think about line class records without remembering a line that Berkeley came out with in the 90s. They called it World Record Class Line. And yeah, let this be maybe an interesting tidbit for folks on American line ratings.
Okay.
So Berkeley comes out with this world record class fishing line, and they could not sell it to save their lives. You know what the problem with it was? It broke at the test it was supposed to break at. So if it said 10-pound test, it would break when you put 10 pounds of pressure on it. That's what you want if you're trying to set a record with IGFA, because IGFA, or the Freshwater Fishing Hall of Fame, they demand that you send in a section of line, a certain length of line with your application, and they check it. So your line may come off the spool and it says 10, but when they get it and they test it, it's really 14. Okay? So you say, what the hell? 10 pound. No, and that's what IGFA is trying to check. Now, this is not a joke. This is a conversation I've had with most of the line manufacturers that sell fishing line in America. This is true for monofilament and fluorocarbon, but especially true for braid. The braid you buy, and that says 20-pound test braid, actually will test 40. And they will put a label on it that says 40 and send it to every other country in the world because it's, honest to goodness, 40-pound braid. And people in other countries want to know what it really tests. In America, they'll take the 40-pound braid and put a 20-pound label on it because Americans aren't happy if it breaks when it's supposed to break. And that is every fishing line manufacturer on the planet. It's not as exaggerated for fluorocarbon or mono, but it's also exaggerated, probably by about 50%. So if you're throwing 10-pound fluoro, it probably breaks it close to 15, because these manufacturers have learned that they will get nothing but complaints and lose business if their stuff actually breaks where it says it's going to break. So that's a little.
We used to fish Green Max when I was a kid. I mean, up until I left California. Green Max was what everybody in Southern California threw.
Yeah, and people in the East didn't throw Maxima. Nobody threw Maxima in the East.
8-pound broke at like 12. 10-pound broke at 15. 12-pound broke at 18. I mean, it was strong line, you know.
Strong line.
Unbelievably strong line. But you couldn't use it if you were trying to get a record. I mean, 4 broke at like 8. I mean, it was.
Yeah. Anybody who thinks these lines are better because they break at a higher level than on the label, these folks who make fishing line, they know exactly when that stuff is going to break, but they're putting a different label on it because they know their market so well. Yep. So anyway, sorry, that was a long roundabout thing to answer. What do I think, or what do we think about line class records?
Tacklecraft is asking, has La Perla Ranch pumped out any fish of significant size?
Yeah, for anybody who's not familiar with La Perla Ranch is basically within rock throwing distance of the Mexican border in Texas. It was started by, I'm running Terry Battisti off. I can't believe that.
I'm going to get rid of a shoe.
It was started by I believe he was a dentist, but he might have been a surgeon. I can't remember the gentleman's name now. I've actually been to La Perla. I've actually fished La Perla. Interesting, fascinating place. He was building these lakes out there, and he was trying to grow a world record. He was feeding them all kinds of different stuff, including some plant-based food. And he was growing some big fish. I can't remember what his best was, but it wasn't anywhere near a world record. Now, I went out there about 8 or 9 years ago and fished it and saw some decent fish caught. I don't think I saw anything over 10 caught out there. But my understanding is, and I could be wildly wrong, but my understanding is he is no longer running it as an operation to try to grow a record fish. He never got very close, and he's no longer in the business of doing that. I think I might have even heard a report that he had sold the property, but I'm not sure.
Is that the guy that was feeding his fish like shrimp and stuff?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Interesting place, yet another Texas proponent trying to grow a record, but this guy did not get very close. He had one interesting pond he had out there. It was not a big deal to catch a 30-pound redfish out of one of his ponds. So you'd sling a bait out there, and you're maybe waking a spinnerbait back, and all of a sudden, wham! And you're thinking, please be a bass, please be a bass, please be a bass. No, not a bass.
David is asking.
David Zhang!
Oh, yeah.
Our buddy.
Racer you?
Limiting to largemouth and smallmouth only, which one of the 2 world records will most likely be broken next?
That's easy. The largemouth record. Now, Stephen Barden won't tell you it's easy, and Terry Battisti might not tell you it's easy, but I know, David. I know the answer.
Yeah, I have no idea, to be honest with you. I think it's a 50-50. Someone gets on the right fish at Door Shack.
The second best smallmouth bass ever caught is significantly smaller than the world record.
Pound smaller. That's 10%.
That's significantly smaller, and that's one of the reasons why I think that I'm going to tell you exactly how much smaller. And I think that's the big problem. It's 9% smaller, and that's just too much. I'm not saying it can't be broken, but that's too much to put the odds on the smallmouth falling before the largemouth.
BTC, why are you taking stupid pictures of me? Oh, God.
He's taking pictures of you on screen?
Yeah.
Thank God it's impossible to take a picture of me that looks bad.
I have... Oh, my God.
Nathan, what do we got?
Oh, just in reply to that, Clay said, I think the Smalley record falls in 3 years or less. Largemouth is way out of sight.
All right, Clay. I'll take some of that action. Remember that the second best smallmouth in history was caught in 1969, whereas the tie for the world record largemouth was caught, less than 15 years ago.
And then if you look at Croupies 2201,
that was caught. That was caught less than 30 years ago.
1991.
Yeah, about 30 years ago. So they've knocked on the door of the largemouth record. Nobody's put a scare into David Hayes.
And then you got Weekly's fish that was 2501.
Yeah.
God,
that would put the record chase out of business. Not that the record chase isn't already almost out of business for whatever reason. Well, the fact they're not stocking so many trout in California anymore has really put the hurts on the drive to catch a new world record largemouth.
No, that just kills me that they snagged that fish, and it's got to kill them.
Yeah, I mean they gave up the hunt. Krupe gave up his hunt. Cadota gave up his hunt. These guys who had the biggest drive to try to catch a record.
Well, Cass Date got ruined, and that was Cadota's.
Porter Hall, Porter Hall, if you're listening, or if folks who know Porter Hall, Love to have
Yeah.
Porter Hall come on here sometime. He's one of the guys who tried to raise a world record.
Yep.
So many people to talk to, folks. We're excited about the shows we have in mind for the future, and please, one of the reasons we give out our email address at the end of every program is because we would like to hear from you privately. Let us know what you'd like us to do next. If you've got a
Yeah.
lead on a cool story or got some information about a catch that maybe we don't have,
Yep.
share that. That kind of lead goes a long way to helping us decide, yes, we can do this story. We're looking at doing a story right now on Ohio, and not the Ohio State record, but I'm actually looking at doing a story on a fish that was caught in 1972, and I think maybe should have been the state record for a while, but it wasn't recognized for a weird reason. So if you got stuff like that,
Yeah.
we'd love to hear you.
Yeah. And we'll wrap the official state record into that story too.
There's Bill Sonnet.
All right,
Yep.
Bill.
He's asking if there are any records of very large bass caught on topwater baits.
Absolutely. Absolutely. There are plenty of topwater baits that have produced big fish, Bill. In fact, there is at least the argument or the perception that Perry was fishing his creek chub fintail shiner basically as a topwater bait when his fish allegedly struck. He talked about seeing this mysterious ripple on the water, and he throws out there and he basically gives the bait a twitch, and then the whole world exploded, that kind of stuff, depending on which of the many variations of that story you buy into.
Walleye Channel is just asking, can we send you photos and questions?
Well, are you going to send the kind of photos that Brian the Carpenter takes of Terry?
No.
Or
If they're done with taste. Yeah, absolutely. Send questions, photos.
yeah, man, like I said, we'd love to hear from you.
If put NS, what is it? Not suitable for work in the title, or
Yeah,
the
NSFW.
subject. Yeah.
We are a tribe, folks. It's you and us. We don't know
Yeah.
what our problem is, but we know it's hard to pronounce, and we are one of you. We're just the extra geeky ones who are willing to take the time and energy and try to tell these stories. But we are you.
South Jersey again, he's asking, how much would the world record bass be worth if you somehow published the article before releasing it and somehow got sponsor deals?
Wow, tough question. Tough question. So much about that is going to be determined by who catches it. The glory days of big money and the largemouth bass record were the early 2000s. You had organizations like the Big Bass Record Club putting up bounties of as much as $8 million then. Most of those bounties have fallen apart. And it's kind of ironic because on the one hand, nobody's knocked on the door of the world record in a long, long time, so you'd think now would be a great time to put a bounty out there because you won't have to pay it off. What do you think, Doctor?
I just, everybody has always said $1 million, and I just don't see it. I mean, you catch it, you're going to have to keep it alive. The good thing going about today is that most likely it will be caught on video because everybody's got a GoPro these days. There's a ton of people. Just look at Butch Brown and Oliver Nye, probably the two biggest fish ever recorded, cast to catch, and but they haven't. I mean, you can arguably say that Butch Brown and Oliver have made money off of those recordings because they have YouTube channels that make money off of those recordings. And they've probably gotten them some sponsorship money, in ways. But have those two fish been worth $1 million? I don't think so. I know they haven't. Would a 23.5-pound fish garner $1 million? Maybe if it was on video, and it was caught on a bait. I mean, not live bait.
Yeah, we talked about Carita's fish, and Carita, through no fault of his own, did everything wrong. He caught it on live bait. He doesn't speak English. He caught it on JDM products, which you can't get in the U.S. He he just did everything wrong. If you want to make money, caught it in Japan. Don't do that. Don't do that.
Yeah. The money in bass fishing's here. It's not in Japan. It's not in Africa. It's not in Italy or Portugal or Spain. It's here in the United States, and so it has to come out of the United States to make any money on it. I think Karita got a Skeeter bass boat, maybe some electronics, but everything else that he got was all Japanese stuff, Japanese rod line, reels, that type of thing.
Yeah, and in Japan, that's an enemy fish. Largemouth bass, an enemy fish. You're not supposed to keep them. You have to be a specially licensed guide to be allowed to release those fish. So you're supposed to kill them.
Mm-hmm. So,
Nathan?
Yeah, he just South Jersey again just added to that. Why did they put bounties on those records? Was it for endorsement?
Yeah, it was the Big Bass Record Club, organized by a guy named Mickey Owens, who I think was a car dealer in Tampa. I was on the board of governors or that organization for a while, along with Doug Hannon and some others. And the plan, of course, they had was sell memberships. You could not win the bounty unless you paid like $20 a year to be a member. And they were giving away prizes not just for the world record, but also for state records and so forth. So you had an incentive to join, even if you lived in a place that was never going to produce a world record largemouth. But they were trying to make money off that. They also wanted to get the fish. So if you, there you go, Rich, I like your question or statement. But what they were trying to do was, if you caught the fish, they wanted you to try to keep it alive, and they would get possession of the fish. So they were planning on showing it, displaying it, and things like that. So obviously, any effort like that, any sort of bounty, the people behind it have a plan to make money on it. And hey, more power to them. If they're going to pay $8 million, they deserve to try to make some money of their own to get some of that money back. But it was an insurance policy that was going to pay the $8 million.
Mm-hmm.
I should pull out my Big Bass Record Club $8 million bounty cap that I wore for that episode.
Hella bass. Probably worth more if caught on cheese. Absolutely. You'd get Velveeta right there, baby.
Exactly. You go for that craft. That big craft money. Now you're talking.
Oh,
now you're talking.
God.
I assure you they have more money than just about anybody in the fishing business.
Can see the commercials now. Oh, they bastardize that. They'd probably get the fish and flay it out and put cheese on it or something.
Horrible.
We're getting down to the end here, I think.
All right.
Tacklecraft is asking, theoretically, what's the biggest bass living on planet Earth right now?
Uh-huh.
Doctor?
I'd say there's got to be something between 22 and 24 pounds. But how many are there? There might only be 2 or 3. And where are they? That's what really screws with the odds of catching it. Ken, what do you think?
I'm with you there. I'd like to think there are some between 22 and 24. The biggest fish we've ever seen, of course, with any sort of legitimacy, was Dottie in 2006 when Mac Weekly snagged her, and she weighed 25.1. I think when that fish got caught, most of us gasped. We had no idea they could get that big. I think there are very few bass out there that would break the current world record, but I say very few, and there might be 100 of them, which seems like a lot, but when you spread them around the globe, it's not that many.
Yeah.
What is the biggest bass living on planet Earth right now? If I got to guess, I'll throw out the number 23 pounds.
I mean, if we had not ever seen Mac Weekly's Dottie at 25.01, would we have even said 25 pounds?
I would not have.
Yeah.
Look at what George Perry did with his 1932 fish. He moved the world record up more than 2 pounds.
Yep.
And nobody came even close to it until 1973 when a 20-pound, 15-ounce fish came out of California. I think there was every reason to believe in that stretch that 22.4 might never be broken. And technically, it still hasn't been broken. But because we saw Dottie in 2006, we can say, yeah, they get bigger.
But we also know what happened to Dottie just 3 years after that. When she
Yep,
died,
Dottie
she
was in
died.
decline. Yeah.
She weighed 19 pounds when she died. So she lost 6 pounds, you know, in that, you know, got up to the hump and quickly went down.
Hey, that's what we do too. You know, maybe we don't gain the weight until that. A bass is apparently capable of growth almost until it dies, but at some point the bass becomes a weakened creature and starts to decline. Can't catch the same bait as before, and it diminishes. So
BTC is asking the biggest smallmouth bass in Lake Michigan versus Mike Ditka. Who wins?
Oh,
is this
Ditka.
Mike? Is this Mike Ditka 1965 when he's tied in with the Bears, or is this Mike Ditka today, 80-something years old? BTC, if you're going to ask the question, you got to come on. You got to get with the program here and ask a really coherent question, because Terry and I studied for this one, and we can answer, but you got to ask it better.
A few more here. I'll go through quick. People asking about merchandise again. How do I get a Big Bass Podcast hat like that from Angler Anthony?
Yeah, we're going to have to do that.
Terry asked him the question again. Do they want the Big Bass Podcast logo?
He said like that. I say
Yeah.
we put a poll out there. I say we do a limited run of 50 of those hats. And then we get some more hats and put the logo on them.
Well, we'll have to talk about that. Nathan's got to have a say in that. I got no issue with it.
I didn't say when.
Yeah, exactly. You know, and I'll mention this again. I think I mentioned this in a post to the Hayes 3 episode. Our original plan was when we reached about 10,000 subscribers, we would introduce merchandise, because then we felt like we would have maybe a big enough audience that it would be warranted. And of course, we're just over 1,100 subscribers right now. I don't know at what point it becomes fiscally responsible to introduce merchandise, but we want to do it because, hey, we want to wear it too.
Yeah, Nathan and I are sick of sitting there watching him wear the hat when we don't even have one. So.
And I got this for sometimes when I was making an appearance maybe on somebody else's show, and I wanted to promote what we're doing here. And folks, anything you can do to help promote the show, share the show with the people who enjoy hearing from you on it, then by all means. Jacob.
You guys got some great ideas for merchandise. This is
Yes.
awesome.
Smallmouth.
Yes. Walter Hardin, my hero.
Yep.
Walter Hardin. Yeah. To know what Jacob's talking about there, you got to go back and listen to the Walter Hardin World Record Smallmouths from Florida show.
All right, so I'm going to throw one out there. And we did this at Bass Fan when I first came out with the Big Bass Podcast Calculator back in 2005. Scott Laney had a bunch of T-shirts printed out that had my formula on it. And I think above it and below it, it said some people need it, some people don't. Or some people won't, or something to that effect. But I've been thinking about putting that on a T-shirt with just size matters on it, because if it's not 14.5 pounds, you can't use the formula.
Brown Bait Company's got a great idea. Do a pre-order, so we buy just enough.
Okay, cool.
That's very smart. That's what we need to do. And of course, there are places like Shopify that handle everything for you.
Yeah. You see, we're old people that don't really know how to turn our computers on. So
Nathan's
all
not
this
that
stuff
old.
is like, well, yeah, that's true. Nathan's a millennial.
Don't say it like that.
Oh, the way we suffer because he's a millennial. He
Yeah.
insists on a trophy after every show. It's disgusting.
Just want some recognition.
Hey, never mind. I'm not going to go there. Never mind. Okay, what do we got from? Yep.
Chris says, Ken, the hat logo should be an outline of the state of Florida with the words Big Bass Podcast inside the outline.
Chris, you're a genius. I agree. I wish I had thought of that, but thank God you did. Thank you, sir. That is awesome. Because, hey, what we know about largemouth bass is they don't get big unless they have Florida genetics. That's one thing we know.
I can't argue with that. There's nowhere I could take that.
Well, you could argue with it, but you would be wrong. So
Yeah.
All right, you ready for one more question?
One more.
last one.
Non-merchandise related. Any info on the Texas guys that had transmitters on the Teener bass years ago?
Let's WFOATT, however you say that. I apologize. I'm not even going to try. I think you're talking about John Hope, the guy who was a fishing guide in Texas, and in a long time ago, he wrote a book, and I'm going to try to remember when he did that book. But it was quite some time ago, and he did a tracking study, and it included some Teener bass, and he did a book. Terry, can you talk for a moment? I'm going to pull it off the shelves.
Yeah, I can't remember. I mean, I remember when it happened. I don't remember the book. But I remember there was a write-up in Bassmaster about that. And I honestly, I hadn't thought of this until you just brought this subject up. So I'm like useless right now. I'm turned into Vanna White. Anyway, yeah, I'm at WFO. I'm as interested in you to relearn about the subject because Ken's going to bring us up to speed on it. All right.
Okay.
We're ready. I failed you. I failed you, Ken. I turned into Vanna White in a drop of a hat.
Terry only wants to turn the letters. That was originally supposed to be his job on the show. And here's the book I think you're talking about. It's called John Hope's Trackin' Trophies. And the author's name is Jesse Miller. Okay. Miller was apparently the guy who they got to actually write it up. But John Hope was the guy who was putting the transmitters in these fish and so forth. And this book came out in 2001. And he did most of this work, but it was originally printed in 94, okay? So he did a lot of this work in the 80s. And you can see there's a massive fish he's got on the cover that they tracked. And what the study is all about is how these fish move, including some giant fish. It's a fascinating book. I absolutely recommend it to anybody. And unfortunately, I'm going to say, hey, I wish you luck in finding this book. It took me years to get a copy of this book. But if you do find one, it is well worth the read. It's very interesting. Let's see if I can give you some more information on it. It was published, copyright Trackin' Trophies, TRACKIN apostrophe Trophies. Fishing Hotspots, the map company, was one of the sponsors of this effort. Originally published in 1994, but a second edition came out in 2001. That's the one I was able to get. This is the 2001 here. I've never even seen the 94. It was probably a very limited run.
And then Whiskey Branch Lures adds to that by saying Todd Driscoll did a study on Toledo Bend with transmitter bass. He had some Teeners in it. He says you can see the interview with him on Ken Smith Fishing on YouTube, so I'll have to check that out.
Thank you for that, Whiskey Branch. That's great stuff. See, this is a tribe.
Yep.
This is a tribe. We're out here. Terry and I are doing this because we have such a passion for it. And one of the coolest things is to get to see you guys and interact with you guys, and see that our passion is not alone. And Rich Lindgren is pointing out the obvious here.
A hell of a
Terry's the eye candy of the show. He's strictly the eye candy.
Maybe when I was a baby. I've turned into a big hairy beast is older I get.
And Walleye Channel, Nathan.
I cannot see Terry wearing a hat and covering those locks.
Oh God. Yeah, I COVID. I just got lazy. I quit shaving and I quit cutting my hair.
I quit cutting my hair too, but it didn't matter. My hair left me.
Brown Bait Company said, "You folks are always welcome to come on my live show whenever you guys want. I look forward
Thank
to your
you.
next episode. Cheers. This was very fun."
Thank you,
Brown
Brown
Bait
Baby.
Company, holler at us, man. We're happy in anything we can do. We'd love to be on your show. Let us know.
Yep.
If we don't have to do something else, we'd love to do it.
Yep.
I've been very lucky over the last, I don't know how many years, 15 more years. Gotten to do a lot of different shows and made a lot of friends through it, including Brian the Carpenter through being on Ike Live and the Bass University. Brian, Nathan, and I are going to be doing another show very soon. We're going to call it Bass After Dark. Get ready for that. Getting to know the folks at the different shows. Rich Lindgren's show, the Hellabass show. I tell you what, I think Terry. I'll say this: when we did that show with Rich, that was the closest we've ever come to being on a show that was just like our ordinary conversation.
Yeah. And I think tonight was pretty much the same way.
Pretty much the same, yeah.
This whole hair thing's got a life of its own.
Majestic Lions.
Oh, Jesus.
All right.
Walleye Channel, thank you, man.
You see-
we were enjoying doing. Oh yeah, look at the glare, guys. We have to paint his head black. I mean, it's like a flashlight.
There are only so many perfect heads, and the rest are covered with hair.
Anyway, Walleye Channel and everybody else, thank you so much for the support. I don't think we could have imagined it would have been like this. So.
No, this has been so much a better experience than we thought. Really, we were thinking, there's a chance that we're going to kick this sucker off, and we're going to be the only 3 people on it. That would have been awkward, but we were still going to do it.
Yeah, exactly. All right,
and we
guys.
really only planned to do 90 minutes, so we wound up doing
3
hours.
Almost, yeah.
Holy crap. I wonder how many people are going to watch it the whole way through after it's dropped.
Craziness.
Holy
And
crap.
I've been so thrilled and we're wildly flattered. There's still 68 people watching this
Holy
show.
mackerel. Wow.
68.
Oh my gosh.
Even my wife wouldn't watch this long. David Zhang is back. David Zhang is back in the pod. No, David, if you know me, if I were drunk, I would have told you. I would have told you. If you want to see me
17
drunk, you
times.
got to watch the Record Keepers show. I was drunk on that one.
Chris,
Thank you,
thank you,
Chris.
sir. And we're planning on doing this about, I don't know, every couple months or so. Missed most of it. Go back and check it out. Thanks, brother. Appreciate it.
Yeah, Tim, we had a lot of good questions coming in, so I hope it'll be worth watching later. We sure had a great time with it. Cannot thank y'all enough for being part of it. And like I said earlier, we give out our email addresses and stuff for a reason. I'll give out my phone number if somebody wants it. It's 407-574-1898. I love talking with, interacting with, meeting folks who have the same disease I do. And I'm not talking about the hair disease of no hair. I'm talking about the bass fishing over the top disease.
Yeah.
And I'll give you
right.
Terry's phone number later.
Uh,
Bold move, says Rich Lindgren.
bold move. Way bold. All right.
No, it's not that bold, Rich, because people realize if they call that number, they'll have to talk to me. So most people won't do it.
All right. Are we going to slam the door on this one?
Why not?
All right.
It's been fun. Thank you.
It's been fun. Thank you, everybody. We truly appreciate you. And like Ken says, hit us up anytime if you got questions or want to send us pictures. Just mark them properly. All right, guys. Thank you.
Thanks, guys, and good night.
See you, Gene.